Certainly. I'll start with Miss Lane Gallus because I know she's off camera.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Williams,
Here.
Miss Jordan Byron,
Present.
Miss Wells,
Here.
Mr. Ferguson,
Here.
Mr. Pachis, Mr. Cantor,
Here.
Mr. Mushak,
Here.
and Mr. Schulman.
Here.
Okay.
Okay. First, let me ask if you're not here for Wall Street Place, could you please stop your video until we get to your item? All right, and then we'll, first item is 05-20 SPR/07-20 CAM, Wall Street Recap Associates LLC and Municipal Holdings LLC, 61 Wall Street, extension of time request for approved coastal site plan review application. And I'll call on Attorney Klein to make the presentation.
Great. Hey, thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm also joined by a colleague of mine, Rachel Breslin, who's somewhere here on the bingo screen. And then, of course, Todd McClutchy, who's with us as well, representing ownership. I think both this and the second item on the agenda for 17 Isaacs are really part and parcel, one and the same, just an extension for a project you all approved, I think in January 2021, substantial workforce housing opportunity at 61 Wall Street and 17 Isaacs. Unfortunately, we did have an appeal shortly after you all granted the approval. And I think, fortunately for all of us, the Superior Court resolved that appeal in our favor, not just the applicant's favor, but in the commission's favor as well. That was in late July. So this extension before you this evening really just allows us to make up for the time that we lost while that appeal was being processed in the Connecticut Superior Court system. We have, made some progress since the resolution of the appeal. The building at 17 Isaac has been demolished. We're, getting together financing, building permit drawings, all that good stuff. But when a neighbor takes an appeal, you'll lose some time. So we're here to just try and get that back. That's really it.
If I may, and I understand we can't hold you to this. Do you have a target date for when you expect to begin work?
I know Mr. McClutchy's on the line here. Todd, do you have any sort of additional details on timing that you want to share? I know it's tough to time things out.
It's tough to pinpoint. I mean, we are working as quickly as possible, like Jay said, to complete construction documentation, round up the financing, and start as quickly as possible. Our goal is certainly to start this year, into 2023.
Right.
So,
okay. Are there any other questions?
I'm just curious, Mike Mushak here. Is the building structurally sound under that Tyvek? There's lots of speculation, and I'm just hoping that there wasn't any damage in the long time that it was mothballed.
yeah, so we've been keeping a close eye on that, and we've continued to keep the Tyvek and other repairs in place to try to protect it as best as possible. It is holding up pretty well. We'll continue to have our consultants and structural engineers, monitor to make sure that there aren't any structural issues or issues to the integrity of the structure itself.
Thanks. And, I'm just going to say here, we all know this already, most of us anyway, but the project's integral to the success of Wall Street. And that was the formula we used in South Norwalk, and everybody can see the results, by bringing residents. It's a captive audience of customers for the businesses. And I've lived in Sono for 20 years, and I've seen sea change after the Pearl and Ironworks, various other projects came online. So we've all been waiting patiently for this one. And we know that it's so important. It's the keystone to Wall Street. So looking forward to seeing it start.
Terrific.
We appreciate that, and we do believe it is a catalyst for the area, no question about it. And we can't wait to get the project started.
Great.
Anything else for Ms. Attorney Klein or Mr. McCletchie? If
Oh,
not, oh, go ahead.
No, I said that's all I've got, unless there are any other questions. Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion for a one-year extension?
I'll make the motion. Mike Mushak here.
I think we ought to handle these as separate motions. So this will be for 61 Wall Street. We'll handle 17 Isaacs immediately afterward. Okay.
I make
Mike
that
has made the
motion.
motion. Is there a second? Galen has seconded. Any questions or comments? All right, if not, we'll go immediately to a vote. I think we can do this with show of hands. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? All right.
JJ, we can't see.
Can you hear me? My video stopped working.
Oh, that's okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Was your
Oh,
hand up?
thank you. I don't know what's going on with my video. I was trying to raise my hand.
Okay, your hand was raised, then
Thank you.
it is
Okay.
unanimous.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you for alerting us to that.
Thank you.
Mr. Klein, is there any, Attorney Klein, I apologize. Is there anything further you wish to say about 17 Isaacs?
No, I think we covered it all a moment ago. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just remind everyone, as Attorney Klein said, that building has been demolished and looks as if it's ready to move forward. Can I have a motion to authorize a one-year extension on 17 Isaacs? Hector has made the motion. Is there a second? And
Second.
Mike Mushak has seconded. Questions, comments? All right, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, show of hands again.
Aye.
Okay,
I
unanimous. And
I'll say something, one thing. I rescued 3 seats. Actually, somebody else I know rescued 3 seats from the theater. They were never used. They were replacement seats. And they drove up as they were knocking it down and got them. And then I got them in my car, and then I delivered them to Factory Underground, Mark Allen. So they're going to be set up right across the street from the old theater. And there's going to be a little plaque, and it's going to be a little historical tribute to the theater.
right,
Lots of people have memories of that theater.
right.
that's really great.
Yeah, it was a funny thing. And anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there.
I did not appoint alternates to vote on this. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. We have one vacancy, we had 2 vacant seats. One that has been vacant since we combined the 2 commissions, and one because we have a member who has resigned.
Yeah, my math could be off, but I'm trying to think because JJ and Tammy are off screen, so that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
There's
I
two
count-
vacancies, but 1 vacancy is an alternate position.
Oh,
Yes,
I
okay.
filled a vacancy before.
yeah, I count 8 regular members and 2 alternates.
Okay, you're quite right. So Hector, for that one, for the first one, Darius was authorized. For the second one, Hector was authorized. But nonetheless, it was still, in both cases, a unanimous vote. And on the next item on which we need to vote,
Lou, who
Um,
resigned?
Brian?
Mr. Baxendale.
right,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, I miss his British accent on the commission.
Frankly, I miss his wise counsel. he was a real asset to the commission. Okay, item C, 2022-50 CAM. NHRG VLLC 41 North Main Street, modification to number 8-95 CAM, approval to convert existing second floor office space to 5 residential dwelling units, report and recommend action. And Mr. Haynes, are you going to represent? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Flaherty will represent the applicant. For those of you who don't know, this is the old Norwalk City Hall.
Yeah, good evening. I think this is a neat little project. Hopefully you consider it a minor modification as we did. But I'm here, Craig Flaherty, Senior Engineer and Principal of Redness and Mead, here representing the applicant. The principals are traveling, Jacob and Joseph Feldman. They like to buy beautiful old buildings and adaptively reuse them, and that's their proposal here. It was the old City Hall back between 1995 and 1996. This commission took a number of votes and actions to allow for its adaptive reuse, eventually all as office space. So this is the orientation. We'll zoom in on that a little bit more, but on the left side of the site or the west side of the site, we've got North Main Street. And on the north side of the site, we've got Marshall Street. On the east side of the site is the cutoff of the Danbury line of the railroad tracks right there. So the building we're talking about is, of course, the one up front facing North Main Street, with the parking area in the back. And the proposal is really related to the second floor. But actually, Vince, why don't you move forward to the site plan, get a little more specific on the site plan. So this is the site plan. There's really nothing to see. It's effectively the existing conditions survey, because there is no proposed site work. Everything you see on site today will stay as it is, and the renovations effectively are all interior to the existing structure and all on the second floor. And I'll show you what I mean by that. The next sheet kind of shows the existing floor spaces up on that second level. You see on the left side of the screen, existing offices, conference room corridors, elevator, stairs. The right side of the screen is actually a vaulted 2-story space. So they're going to add a second floor in that space as like a mezzanine level for some lofts in the units. And you'll see that on the next screen. So that shows you the orientation of the 5 residential units on the inside of the structure. And if you go, I think, Vince, you also have the rear elevation. So the only change that you'll see, well, it'd be hard to see actually because it's on the back side of the building. Currently, there are 2 windows on the back of the building, and we're proposing to add 2 windows to provide windows in each of the residential units, and they'll match in style and type their respective existing windows. The redevelopment agency looked at this as is required in the Reed Putnam design area, and they had no problem with the addition of the windows. Applicants are looking forward to getting started. We had no issues really with the suggested staff report and suggested conditions of approval. WPCA, the sewer department, had no comments. DPW wanted us to address any tripping hazards in the walkways out front, which is not a problem. TMP had more comments, but we're happy to continue to work with them between now and zoning permit to make sure both sides are happy. That's pretty much it. That is a CAM project, just by nature of the fact that the site is within 1,000 feet of the Norwalk River. However, there are no coastal resources associated with the project, and since there's no site work, we couldn't do much harm anyway. So happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, we're looking forward to getting started.
Questions for Mr. Flaherty? Well,
I have one. Oh,
Well, go ahead,
Yes, sir.
please.
yes. Oh, will the windows be tinted since that is like a pretty visible site? Tinted to the
Oh, yeah.
outside.
The windows are on the back side of the building facing the railroad tracks. So there's not much to see. I actually don't know if they're tinted. They're going to match whatever is there. That's really the requirement when working with historic buildings such as
Okay.
this.
All righty.
I have a question for Mr. Flaherty,
Sure,
please.
go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you. It's Tammy. Just curious what kind of was the impetus for creating these residential units, and any idea what they're going to rent for? They're
don't,
rentals,
yeah.
right? You're not selling them.
That's correct. They're rentals. I do not know what target rents are. This is kind of what the applicants like to do. They've done it a few times in New Haven. This is their first foyer into Norwalk. But like I said, they like to try to bring life to kind of underused older buildings. I think it's no surprise that it's probably harder to rent kind of quirky office spaces in this market. I think it'd be a good place, a really neat place for folks to live.
Thank you. I agree. I think it's great that they're preserving the building. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure,
ma'am.
go ahead, JJ.
So, each unit, will they be equipped with their own utility base, such as, electrical, air conditioning? I mean, how will that be metered?
Yeah, I don't know what the construction plan is, but I can say that on most of these types of projects that we work on, they try to have the heating and cooling by apartment, not by building. And I think that's probably the direction we're headed here as well.
And as a safety aspect, do these units also have how many entrances do they have?
That's a great question. Let's look at that second floor floor plan. Obviously, we have to meet whatever the building code requirements are. You see that there are 2 stairways at opposite ends of the hallway and the elevator. So each apartment will have access to the corridor and then 2 means of egress through fire stairs out the building.
And will they be on the will they be part of the system alarm?
In terms of fire alarm systems,
Yep.
alarm system for the building, yeah, I mean that would all have to meet current code based on the proposed upgrades.
So the whole building is connected. These units are not separated, segregated.
No, if there's an issue anywhere in the building, everybody will be notified to evacuate.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Any other questions for Mr. Flaherty?
I just
Yes,
have a
I
comment.
have, go ahead, Mike, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right, Steve. No, you go.
Oh, thank you. What a kind gentleman you are.
Well, I talked already earlier.
Question I had, Craig, regarding ADA accessibility going to the back parking lot. The lighting there is sometimes dark at night.
Okay.
Just wanted to know how you are looking to prepare the access to the back parking lot with light back there.
Yeah, let's go to the site plan, Vince.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I'm happy to bring that observation to the client and let them know that based on your observation, it's a little dim out there and they might want to take a look at that. There is an ADA ramp. You can see it says concrete ramp on the south side of the building. And then the 2 ADA spaces, which are striped today, are indicated there where Vince is.
Yeah, those 2 spots are normally used by the other building too.
Yeah, this is per the original approvals in 95 and 96, this is a shared parking lot. So 10 Marshall Street uses this parking lot. And then there's 9 parking spaces way on the south that are spaces, but a portion of which are positioned on the lot.
So the question is, since it's shared, who would be in charge of maintaining that space with lighting and maintenance?
Yeah, maintenance is clearly the property owner. 41 North Main needs to maintain the parking and keep it in good condition and safe.
So what would be their plans? You're going to come back to us or give it back to staff as far as the lighting
So,
back there?
At this point, the plan was to just reuse the existing site. They had no plan to add additional lighting, but as I said, if we're happy to have someone take a look at that as a part of the process between now and zoning permit.
Or maybe some sort of overhang too.
Can you give me thank you.
Overhang, or what can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, on the corner of that building, we see the gas meters.
Yeah.
They're not covered. That's a walkway going up, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Well, yeah, the transformers and the gas meters on the back of the building. And then you have the door that it would be, if you went all the way up the concrete ramp, I believe there's a door at the end there. Again, we were not proposing, other than the 2 windows, any modifications to the exterior building, wanting to keep it as close to its current condition as possible.
Okay, thank you.
I want to call on Michelle. Michelle sent out some TNP comments to us that I received at 5:55. So I haven't had an opportunity to go through them. Michelle, could you summarize those for us?
Sure. So we just received some late comments from TNP, as you saw, as I forwarded over. I revised, and once we get to it, I can bring it up as well. The resolution, we usually do the typical, all conditions that from like DPW, WPCA, and TNP are applied to this approval. Since the applicant didn't agree with some of the requirements and there's no proposed site work and there was some kind of extensive work proposed by TNP, that I revised that condition saying that TNP and the applicant would meet to kind of go over a resolution that meets both parties' interests.
Yeah, to be specific, I can elaborate a little bit. The recommendations from TNP were to replace all sidewalks fronting the site, move 2 street light poles and associated electricity, move a tree pit, and then resurface 2 tree pits. And we just felt like that was a lot given the fairly minor nature of the proposal. And there wasn't even a site work contractor on this job to do that sort of work. So we have to get them reasonably happy before we get to zoning permit anyway, and we're just happy to have those conversations with them, and I'm sure we'll work something out.
Well, frankly, to both Mr. Flaherty and to our own staff, I would have preferred to have this come before us with those issues resolved. I would,
as would we.
Yeah, I would have preferred to have taken
gotten them ahead of time a little bit, but literally they were issued by TNP at 4 o'clock today.
All right, let's go back to our regular full screen.
Yeah, stop sharing.
Yeah, if you would. So we can move to draft a resolution to either approve or deny this, or we can hold it over until we hear what the resolution to these issues is between the developer and TNP. So I'd like to hear from the commission members about which way you'd like to move on this. Richard?
I agree with Mr. Flaherty that that was a big ask, given what they're doing. But I also agree with you that it would be nice for this to be resolved before we vote on it.
Anyone else? Mike?
Yeah, earlier I was going to say that it wasn't mentioned, but it was the home of the Norwalk Museum for
Right.
a good number of years. And I was in that space a lot when it was the museum, but I remember the beauty of the interior, and I certainly think this is a great idea. I'm comfortable with moving ahead and allowing the parties to come to an agreement, since there really were no proposals to change the outside of the building. I know TMP, they do put out the ask frequently, which is great for the private sector. But in this case, without any exterior site work going on, maybe there's some other resources available that might be integrated with other improvements on surrounding properties, but all in the public realm, on the public right of way. Because I would like to see apartments in that building and see it activated. It's a landmark building, and I think this is a really great example of adaptive reuse of a historic building. And those apartments look great enough that I was imagining living in one someday. The two-story apartments sound pretty fabulous. And the windows on the outside are actually an improvement over a blank wall. So I'm comfortable with moving ahead.
All right. Well, nothing I'm suggesting here would keep the project from going forward. Would simply shift our vote to our next meeting, which may naturally occur just in terms of the consultants getting together with TNP and working out these issues. I hope nobody thought that my comments meant that I was in any way opposed to the project. I want to get people, whether it's our staff or the city or the developers, in the habit of making sure that we have all the materials in front of us and presented to us before we're in a position to have to act on an item. Any further comments from members of the commission? Well, if not, I will entertain a motion either to defer our action to our next meeting or to approve or to deny the application. Galen?
I'd like to move to approve.
Okay, is there a second to Galen's motion to approve?
I'll second, Mike.
Mike is seconded. Michelle, could you put up the draft resolution, please?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm realizing that if for whatever reason we don't get enough votes to approve, because most people would like to defer, we might be leaving with a denial. Might I suggest the vote to defer or not goes first?
You
I'm
could probably do a straw
I'm a little more optimistic than
Or a
you
straw
are.
poll? Okay, great. I would love, obviously, for my applicant, waiting 4 weeks is not ideal. And obviously, if we got into an impasse with TMP, we'd have to be back for you anyway.
Right, okay.
Did TMP give the applicant a time frame, or were they just too busy right at the moment?
No, we just got these comments today at 4 p.m. We had no time to get a meeting together.
I see.
I'm going to seat Hector for this vote.
Just to note, number 6 is what I had revised and crossed out the old number 7,
Okay.
just so you know.
Okay, we have on the floor a motion to approve and a second. Any comments from commission members before we move to a vote?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
With that provision in the resolution, what would happen if they can't come to an agreement?
We'd be back here asking for another modification. We either have to bend or come back and say,
Correct.
this is what we think is reasonable.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's do this as a roll call.
I'm up. Okay.
What?
Let's start. Tammy's off, so I'll remember that. Tammy?
And Tammy's on.
Yeah, yeah.
Are we voting to
she voting?
approve this?
We're voting, the vote is to approve the resolution in favor of moving this project forward.
Okay, yes, I am in favor.
Okay,
And Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Owena?
Yes.
Ms. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Mushak?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
And then we said, Mr. Potches
Hector.
is on? Oh, Hector's on. Yeah, Mr. Potches.
I vote yes too.
And Ms. Jordan Byron.
Thank you.
And Mr. Shulman?
yes,
Sorry.
that's all right.
Thank you for your time. Wish us luck.
So long. Okay, our next item is 2022-553135 South Main Street, 8-story addition to the existing Marriott Sono Residence Inn Hotel to add 48 rooms and 45 off-street parking spaces. This is a preliminary review. So we will not be voting on this. We'll simply be making a decision on whether to move this forward to a public hearing. Attorney Suchi, are you representing?
Yes, Mr. Schulman, I am.
Okay. The floor
Well,
is.
thank you, Mr. Commissioner Schulman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. For the record, my name is Liz Suchi. I'm a partner at Carmody Torrance, Sandak and Hennessy, 1055 Washington Boulevard in Stamford. Present for tonight's meeting, as well as Alan Cosby of the TR Sono Partners LLC, Seelan Pother, principal at Binefield Partners, project architect, and Derek Donay, professional engineer with Rocco V. D'Andrea, project engineers. Just a little bit of background. I understand tonight is preliminary meeting. We're just going to give you an overview of the project so you can understand for the benefit of those commissioners who were not present in 2009 when the original hotel was built, just some background and some forward-thinking comments, thoughts, and a very brief presentation about what the project is all about. We certainly understand that a public hearing is required under special permit. We look forward to when you deem it appropriate and you're satisfied with the responses given and questions answered to schedule that meeting. So we'll dig in. The application was filed on November 17th and neighbors were notified of the submission just a few days prior to Thanksgiving. The certificate of mailing for those notices should be in the P&Z file. The applicant is TR Sono Partners LLC. Property is 3135 South Main Street, District 2, Block 45, Lot 12, and it is in the Washington Street Design District, as well as within the far reaches of the coastal area zone. As a matter of fact, it is at the far end of the boundary of the coastal zone. It is adjacent to the existing Marriott Sono, and the Metro North Railroad tracks are to the west. North of the property is another 2-story building, and the proposal is to develop 31-35 South Main as an expansion of the existing Sono Marriott Hotel. Just by way of background, the hotel that exists today, the 8-story, 102-room hotel, was approved by your predecessor zoning commission in 2009. It was eventually constructed following several extensions in 2019 and is fully operational, has 120 rooms with over 90 parking spaces in a parking structure that's also served by the permitted valet parking system. The existing structure at 3135 South Main Street is a 2.5-story building. There is no basement. The first floor had been occupied over time by various retail merchants and others, the most recent of which was Apadana the rug store. And the second floor is office space. It was built around in the mid-1920s. So the proposal would be to demolish that structure and construct an addition to the existing 8-story hotel, add another 48 rooms with approximately 45 more parking spaces, bringing the total number of rooms to the hotel facility, if all approvals are secured, to about 150 rooms with 135 parking spaces, all of which would be served either individually or through the valet system that this commission approved years ago. We have submitted the application and the plans to all of the required SEAC agencies, and those are Fire, Water, WPCA, DPW, TMP, Health, and the Harbor Commission. The Fire Department has issued its sign off, and we have followed up with the other SEAC agencies as late as last Friday to see if they have any questions, comments, or concerns, and we will continue to follow up with those agencies and hopefully receive their comments, answer them, and secure approvals from them prior to the date that you hold a hearing. So at this point, we will have a meeting before the Harbor Management Commission on December 21st, and then a meeting before the Historical Commission on December 28th to discuss the project. At this point, if you would, I'm recognizing you have some public hearing items after this matter that I'm sure you want to spend time on. I'd like Mr. Donay, if he could, to screen share the site plan. And then after Mr. Donay, I would like Mr. Pother of Vinefield Architecture to walk you briefly through the concept for the hotel, exterior architecture, and whatever other questions you may have on this preliminary basis. So Derek, you could screen share.
Yes. Good evening, Derek Donay from DeAndrea Surveying and Engineering PC, and I will briefly walk you through the different site design elements. So first I will screen share. All right, this is the existing conditions of the site as it is today. So we were tasked with preparing a detailed site design that would address site grading, utility connections, and manage stormwater runoff, such that the development will not cause an adverse impact on adjacent properties or to local stormwater runoff patterns. It is our professional opinion that our site design before you tonight will achieve these goals. I'll quickly touch base on each of the site design aspects so you can understand how we achieve these goals. So the site currently consists of 2 separate parcels. On the southern parcel over here is the number 47 South Main Street, which consists of the existing hotel building. And then the northern parcel, number 31 to 35 South Main Street, consists of the mixed-use retail and office building that covers almost the entire property. As you can see, there's not much, almost the entire site is impervious at this time. Part of this development is to combine the 2 parcels into one property with a total overall site area of approximately 0.7 acres. As Attorney Suchi mentioned, the site is located along the outer fringe of the coastal area management zone. However, it is in a fully developed area and is not adjacent to any coastal resources. Under existing conditions, the combined property is bordered by the City of Norwalk Police Department parking lot to the south, Metro North Railroad to the west, commercial building to the north, and South Main Street to the east. The site is made up almost entirely of paved impervious surfaces and buildings, approximately 99% of the site. The existing hotel building, when it was constructed, it incorporated the use of a water quality hydrodynamic stormwater treatment system that is used to help remove oil and sediment from the hotel building and the hardscape area runoff. That's right here in the entry driveway. The existing mixed-use building has no stormwater treatment measures incorporated into its use. All the stormwater runoff from the combined site is discharged into the city storm drainage system in South Main Street. Now I'll show you the proposed conditions here. So the proposed site design includes the following. You'll have the removal of the existing mixed-use building, the construction of a new hotel building addition with both covered ground level parking and an attached parking garage structure to the rear of the addition. Some very minor site grading, sanitary and utility connections, and additional storm drainage improvements. Access to the site will be maintained over the existing hotel driveway entrance right through the middle here, which is to remain. The proposed parking will include both ADA spaces and electric vehicle spaces. The proposed development will incorporate the use of non-impervious surface treatment along the western side of the new addition. So where the site was almost entirely impervious before, you now have a large area along the rear, which will no longer be impervious. The incorporation of this will help both reduce impervious coverage from the site, as well as reduce both stormwater runoff volume and peak flow rates as compared to existing conditions. The overall amount of impervious surface will be reduced from 99% to 93%, which is a reduction of approximately 1,700 square feet. The proposed stormwater quality measures for the new hotel addition. These will include catch basins with deep sumps and traps, which will be used as pre-treatment measures to reduce grit and floatables from driveway areas, and a new water quality hydrodynamic stormwater treatment system that will be used to help further remove oils and sediments from the stormwater runoff from the new building and parking garage improvements. These measures will be used to help mitigate the impacts on water quality pollution to downstream areas. That's about it for site design. I conclude by stating it is our professional opinion that the site design we have developed will provide water quality and manage stormwater runoff, such that the development will not cause an adverse impact to adjoining properties, the city's storm drainage system, or local drainage patterns. And I'll pass it to the architect now so that he can continue. I will stop sharing the screen.
Good evening. My name is Seelan Potter, principal at Bynefield Architecture. I'll start sharing my screen.
Unknown caller.
So quickly, because we'll come before you again. The original project that you're probably aware of, has been very well received, both in its function and its form and its contribution to the streetscape of Main Street. So we saw this truly as an addition to that. So it complements the existing building. It relies on using the existing building's amenities and functioning spaces, and then is physically linked and continues that function. The architecture, we were happy with what we had produced before. Again, that was well received. The new building is seen to be complementary, similar, but not the same. You can tell that the clues of the abstracted New England style are still there, large windows, the divided lights. Where we set back this facade at the 8th floor, we created a different pattern on the windows at the highest floor on this new building. There's a rooftop terrace that you might have been to on the existing building. There is none on the existing. The two buildings would share this one entry that currently exists. Just very quickly, again, we'll come before you again. The materials, again, are similar, but not the same. The largest departure is the way we're treating the base of the building. This is the new building, this is the existing building, and where we're treating the uppermost floor of the building. Function-wise, this is the driveway entrance that you are familiar with now. You would either come into the existing building at the first floor or go up the ramp to the second floor of that building for the parking above, or you would turn right and go into the ground floor parking of the new building. We have the reception desk and those functions, the breakfast room in the existing space. So we're still deciding on what the space will be, but another hotel amenity, conference rooms, things of the like. All this shows is that the buildings do connect. Again, simple concept, parking connects at the upper level. And then once you get into the hotel function, At this particular floor, there's a gym function and a conference room in this part of the hotel on the third floor. A corridor that runs down here will now just connect into the new building and just continue the run of hotel rooms. And that goes all the way up. So I won't go through every floor. Again, there's a roof deck. The roof decks are not connected, so you'd have to get into that corridor. You'd have to get into this elevator lobby and then go up to the roof deck of the existing building if you wanted to get there from the new building. Architecturally, we think that these two elevations complement each other. We created what we wanted to be as a glazed connection between the two, a negative space, if you will, that separates the two types of architecture. But they're very similar in proportion. The concept for the first floor, I think, was successful. When you walk by the hotel today, two-story grand two-story curtain wall or storefront curtain wall facade. And we're going to do the same here with these grand pilasters. I think that's it, unless you want to see hotel rooms and so on. But that's the main facade of the building.
One quick question. If you go back to your first slide or view there, it looks like you're putting solar on the new addition, which is great and really appreciated and good move. It also looks like you have available space on the original structure. Are you considering, or could you consider as part of this, expanding and using that space?
You know, I do think there's mechanical equipment that's not showing just because we haven't modeled it in this area here.
Okay.
But I think once we get our consultant out there, Alan can speak more to that. They'll look at all available space and see what's most efficient.
I have a question. The ground level addition, what is it used for, that ground level addition?
So like I said, we're still trying to figure out what that is, but it will be some sort of hotel amenity, most likely a conference facility, or something that serves a hotel, because you don't need to repeat the entry sequence with the reception desk and so on, right? So it'll be a hotel amenity.
I asked that because I'm for more event space. We're limited in Norwalk, so my vote will be pretty much on the event space use. We need that in Norwalk, and my vote will be based on how many people we could have at an event space at that new location. I was a part of the approval for the 2009 development of that unit or that dwelling, and that was my main ask before the limited space of event space. Norwalk as a whole, when we do events, we leave town to go to other hotels. Our mayor's having a ball soon. We have to relocate to Stanford on many occasions. There's limited space, and my vote will be based on space on that ground level and the connections thereof.
One second.
I have a question.
Go ahead, JJ.
Yes, the building next to you, next to the building that is scheduled for demolition, that you would like to demolish, is actually a historical building. This is still under review by the historical committee?
Liz, you're on mute.
I'm sorry?
Liz is speaking to that. She was on mute.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Commissioner. We have not appeared before the Historical Commission yet, and I'm certain that your concern will be shared by the Historical Commission, and we will discuss that with them and return to you with whatever recommendations or suggestions or decisions that they make. But we are aware of that, and there are efforts underway to see if there are component parts of the existing structure that's slated to be demolished that might be able to be incorporated. But we look forward to whatever comment, suggestions, and other ideas the Historical Commission shares with us, as well as whatever this commission may share as well for that historic structure.
Yes, I would like to see it incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney Suchi, what is the percentage of the existing parking that is used for the current building?
That parking for the current do you mean what the current hotel itself and the parking resource on the site today?
Exactly, yes.
That is all for the hotel.
Oh, no, I understand that.
I misunderstanding.
I'm wondering what the average, if you will, occupancy of the parking spaces is.
Oh, I apologize. I don't know that. Perhaps Mr. Cosby might be able to answer that. And if not, we'll certainly get that question answered for you for the next meeting. But Mr. Cosby, do you know that number offhand? I'm not sure if Alan's on.
Hi, this is Alan Cosby. I'd say it varies. Obviously, in the middle of the summer, maybe when there's events going on up on the rooftop, it's fuller. But we've never had an issue with parking due to maintaining valet parking almost every day.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yes,
I
go.
have another question.
Go ahead.
How many jobs will you be bringing to Norwalk other than cleaning staff?
I don't have an answer for that. And Mr. Cosby, I'm not sure if you do, but certainly that's an excellent question that we will get specifics for you for the next meeting. I wasn't prepared to answer that question this evening, but I will get that information and have it available. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Attorney Suchi, when are you going before the Historical Commission?
We are slated to appear before them on December 28th. And I anticipate that meeting will go forward barring any, whether it's weather or holiday issues, but that is the date we've been given to appear before them and discuss the project.
Okay.
Another parking question, please. Is all the parking in sort of the second floor of that building? So on both sides, it's all enclosed?
The parking is on both floors. So the first floor also. Very, very similar to the way if you've ever been back into the current building set up. So there's one floor of parking on the ground floor here. And another
On
connected
the
to the second
ground
floor.
floor behind the reception area. So somebody, if they park, they can just come in to the hotel lobby that way.
That is
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
there's a
Thank
door
you.
right there.
I've never actually driven in there.
That's correct.
I have a question,
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike here. Do you have a western elevation, the elevation seen from the railroad tracks, which may seem insignificant, but it actually is seen from a very large portion of the city?
Just to be sure that's it. There's the existing structure. And
Okay.
This is a new one. So we treat it the same way.
There's a tall blank wall on the existing building. So
Yeah, on this side.
on that side, got it.
Mhm. Well, now it'll be that's the wall we're connecting through to get
Got
to
it.
this building. Yep.
All right, because I do remember I cannot believe I remember this, but I remember the 2009 discussion on that large blank facade. And I remember Mr. Beinfield saying it was a great wall for a big mural that would be seen from thousands of people every day on the trains and from a big chunk of the city. That's been made moot by this, if this is approved. And I'm glad to see windows on that side, because a lot of times we concentrate on the front of the building, but this building is tall enough to be seen over the tracks and from all the multifamilies up on Flax Hill and the Golden Hill neighborhood where I live. I actually do see this building from my house. All right, you answered the question. Glad to see this. And I'll just say that it's kind of funny now when about 5 years ago, the Sono Collection Mall, the developer of that came forward and requested their hotel be deleted, and they ended up paying a large fee to the city because they said a hotel couldn't succeed with their market analysis. And I'm just, it's a happy surprise to see that this hotel is doing so well that they're going to add I guess 50% more rooms. And that was just a comment. My last question is to Attorney Suchi. If you could just clarify, you said they're adding 48 rooms, that there's 120 rooms in the existing building, that would equal 168 rooms. And then you said there was 150 rooms in total. So I guess, are they combining some rooms or eliminating some in the existing hotel?
Thank you, Mr. Mushak. If I said 120 in the existing, it's 102. So
Oh.
if I said 120, that was in error. It is 102 plus the 48, there's the 150, but the
Got it.
150 total. So I apologize if I made that error and was confusing.
No worries. It didn't really upset me. I was just curious what was going on with the
New
math. That's all.
That's the Chicago math.
Thank you.
Well, if anyone has any other questions at this preliminary stage, we'd be happy to answer them. I don't know if staff has any other comments, but we will certainly work through comments from staff, comments from the other SEAC agencies when we receive them. Hopefully they'll be received timely. And we look forward to your scheduling of this application for upcoming meeting dates and eventually a hearing.
I just have one question, which is what was the impetus for varying from the original?
I think mostly because the scale of the building width-wise would have been too much with the same aesthetic. If you look at the buildings on the street, especially the tall ones, the beautiful buildings across the street, they're narrow. And architecturally, we didn't want to create an aesthetic that, although very attractive, the first building we think was too wide.
All right, thank you.
Are there any further questions?
And just before you move on from this one, Mr.
I'm not moving on, Brian.
You do have to,
That's what we're gonna do.
authorize the third
Right.
party review.
Can I have a motion to authorize turning this project over for peer review?
I make the motion, Mike here.
Okay, Mike made
second.
the motion and Darius has seconded. Any questions about the peer review?
Is a peer review the Historical Society? The Historical?
No,
Committee?
this would be a typical peer reviewer that we have used to review other significant projects.
Right, but isn't the Historical Commission coming up on the 29th?
On the
No, so
20th.
it's- yeah, it's two separate, so-
That's a separate issue. This is
Right.
on the design aspects of the
Oh, okay.
project.
Thank
And Steve, can you tell us which one of the reviewers will be reviewing this?
I believe it's BFJ Consulting, and we'll have, they're aware of the historic conversation that's going to occur, so they'll probably plug in any feedback and comments from the Historical Commission into their review as well.
Okay. And so clearly, this is not a project that we're going to move to public hearing at our next meeting, or maybe not even the meeting after that. There's still a fair amount of work that needs to be done by the applicant and by our own peer reviewer before we're in a position to schedule the public hearing. Attorney Suchi, any final comments?
No other comments, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the time that you took tonight on this to receive this application and to give us the opportunity to explain its very basic component parts. We look forward to future meetings with you, and we will be diligent in pursuing the various city agencies to get their comments received, answered, and plans revised in accordance with those comments.
Okay, we
Very much
appreciate
for
it.
your time.
Okay, I'd like to add one thing, Mike here.
Go ahead,
Just,
Mike.
just any information on the economic impact of the hotel, the current hotel, would be helpful. I certainly see it as an economic engine for South Norwalk and its occupancy. The guests use the restaurants, and I've been to that rooftop at times where you couldn't even move. So I was hoping that rooftop was going to be expanded somehow, but it just was gridlock, which was fun if you don't mind being in a big crowd. But I thought it was so successful that it could probably be expanded out. In any case, I think the economic impact is an argument that is important in this conversation.
And thank you, Mike. And I also want to piggyback that, Mike Mishak, by talking about the economic impact on the event space too. If you could incorporate that, that'll be beneficial because we travel out of the town to have gatherings. So I want to know the event space of that location. That's all.
We'll see what we can on both of those for you.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, a very happy holiday season to all of you. And again, thank you for your time tonight and wish you all the best for the Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa holiday, and we'll see you in 2023.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your help.
Okay, our next item is 2022-53 Norwalk Hospital Association, 34 Maple Street, modification to the Norwalk Hospital sign manual. Ms. Steele, are you going to represent the hospital this evening?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I am. I am also present with Michael Zolnick, who is here from Nuvance Health, as well as Damian Honda, who is the permit manager that is present from handling the original submission. The presentation that I have for you all this evening is a 45-page drawing book that has current staff support and a resolution, a proposed resolution. I'm happy to go over it, but if the commission just would like to direct questions instead, I'll take your lead on this. How would you like me to proceed?
Well, I think we would like to see some of the major signage and a couple of examples of some of the smaller signage.
Certainly.
So that we have some familiarity, and then we'll go on to questions and answers.
Certainly. If I am allowed to share my screen.
Should be able to, Tracy.
Okay. It is files. Let's see. It's asking me to, it's unique. It's a unique platform of Zoom, which is asking me to share in a way that I've never seen before. Select a window or an application that you would like to share.
Usually if you have it like, yeah, if you have it like pulled up on your screen, you can select which, like if you have multiple screens, you could select which screen you have it pulled up on, and then I'll share that particular screen. Otherwise, you just would do the application and
file. Yeah, it's not allowing me. Damian, is it would it allow you to share? Because it's not allowing me to share.
I can pull it off if it's.
That would be great.
I have it right here. Oh, Michelle has it. Okay.
So just leave me, Tracy, of what you want to.
Okay. So if you just go to the third page, the third page is an overview of what I think is probably the biggest change. The existing elevation shows in the thumbnail, and then the proposed signage for the Norwalk Hospital sign to be added to this elevation. I think that would possibly be the biggest change that you're going to see is this channel letter set that is 48 inches, and then the 48-inch letter set, and then the square footage is 317 square feet for that, and that's shown on page 5 of that brand book. This is a face lit, and we give you in the corner, the top corner, the night view, and that's so that people can find the hospital at night from distances without being close up to the building or being unfamiliar with the area. The next page that you would want to draw your attention to would be the change to sign E06 on page 11 of the brand book. The existing signage is going to be removed and replaced with a double-faced illuminated post and panel sign. The existing signage shows in the bottom little thumbnails, and the replacement signage shows in the larger thumbnails, and this is a 16.5 square foot sign that directs traffic within the campus. The remainder of the signage that you're going, the next page would give you a detail on that sign on page 12. And then the remainder of the signage is very similar to this, EO7, EO8, EO9, E10. They're all directional signage. It's all directional signage geared within the campus to direct traffic, removing. The next page that I draw your attention to, Michelle, is page 24 of the brand book, which is E14. And this is the monument sign that is a non-illuminated cabinet. One more page. This is an existing monument, and we would just be re-imaging the face of the monument at this particular location and keeping it within the same size.
Is that sign lighted?
This is a non-illuminated sign that is currently in place and proposed. It's
Thank you.
non-illuminated. So they are flat cutout letters that are routed and very similar to what's existing there, but just to change the branding of the hospital to bring it current. Just to give you all a little bit of background, Nuvance is taking its place in the greater New York and Connecticut area. They have multiple facilities that are going through this rebranding process. And so this is this has a lot to do with consistency in bringing the Nuvance Health name to your community in a very clear and concise way. The next page is page 25, and that gives you an image of the proposed signage to say that this is a family campus. The existing wall shows nothing, and they're proposing to identify this as Bedford Family Campus, Norwalk Hospital. And the next page gives you the details on those non-illuminated flat cutout letters that say Bedford Family Campus and how they're mounted. And they are 21.2 square feet. So they're 14 inches in height. They're very small letters, but they are efficient to identify motorists that are traveling here at the posted speed limits. The next signage that you're going to see on 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, those are all window vinyl type signs. And those are just pedestrian oriented signs to identify entrances. And also those signs, I recently learned this, and I've been in the sign industry for a very long time, but those signs are also to keep people from walking through glass doors. So they work very well to keep pedestrians aware that this is not just clear glass, that this isn't something they can walk through. They have to wait for it to open. And they serve, in hospitals, they serve great function to identify entrances and the area of the hospital that they're in. And then the rest of the signage is more just informational photographs, some non-illuminated post and panel directory signs, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from commission members?
I had one, Nick here. I appreciated the bilingual nature of a number of your signs. How did you go about choosing where you would implement Spanish first, or in addition to the English? Because I noticed some of the signs, maybe in the maternity section, only had English on it.
So I think in all of the branding that where Spanish and English is present, I think English is above Spanish.
All right, I'm asking a slightly different question of in some cases you have the bilingual, both languages on there, and some signs you don't. Is there rhyme or reason behind that?
I think that the bilingual is only there to identify emergency. I think it's there wherever the word emergency is present.
They
I see
also
the
mean- they also mean
emergencia.
lobby.
I'm sorry, Michael?
It's actually John Sterry sitting in for Michael tonight. It's also identified for main entrance. So typically, maternity patients will arrive in the emergency room for triage and then move to the maternity ward.
Thank you.
Well,
Ms. Deal, I'd like to ask a question, make a comment. We have been looking as a commission at the expansion of Norwalk Hospital. And I've been over there a few times myself. And I think that the font on these signs is too small. If you're coming and it's rainy out, if it's dark, I know that some of these are going to be illuminated, but why don't you make the word emergency go all the way across the sign? You've got space on both sides, and make the letters a little bit higher.
From a branding perspective, if they change the font, then the font has to change everywhere. And this is the standard font that's used at all of their locations. If they make it larger in size, then they have to make the whole sign larger, and they're trying to keep the sign size consistent with what's currently in place. And these signs are typically viewed when a vehicle has come to a fair position of slow or stopped, where they are legible. And they're also usually viewed by pedestrians. These are not signs that are going to be viewed from great distances or from outside the campus. So the United States Sign Council offers recommendations about letter heights for those types of signs, and these signs are consistent with that.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. And with all due respect, when you're arriving at Norwalk Hospital, you're going up a hill and you come to the parking, and then you come to another entrance, and then you come to the emergency entrance. And so you're not at any type of a stop sign. And not only that, you're on a steep hill. So, you know, you're making a sort of split second decision. If you're coming in a car and if you're in an emergency type situation, I would say that people are under stress, and therefore to make it as easy to see as possible would be the goal. I appreciate the wanting of Nuvance to have a consistency, but I think the patient ought to be taken into the primary focus here.
Most certainly. We will take that into consideration. Thank you for your feedback.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go
comment.
ahead, Mike.
Well, I second Tammy's comments just now. Perhaps it's duplicating signs where feasible. But that's the smaller font in the big field is, yeah, it's a little disconcerting, I guess. But I really do like the reverse graphics. I mean, the reverse letters and the light letters on the dark background is a lot easier to read than the current style. So I think that's a huge improvement. I love the sign up on the building for branding, and it's seen by a lot of people driving by on the highway. And it's kind of almost a pride of place function there, I think. So all that's good. There was a sign or two maybe that had nothing on the backside from the materials we were given in the packet. And I'm just wondering if we end up with a sign that has nothing on it at all, like let's say but it's still visible, put a quote on it that says, prevention is better than cure, or some kind of generic happy, healthy quote. I'm not sure if there's some standard quotes that Nuvance uses in their branding, but do you see what I mean when you look at the packet? There were signs that you'd be driving along and it would just be a blank sign because it would only be one-sided. And that just, even if it's a directional sign towards Sono or enjoy Sono or Sono collection, grab some of the visitors to the hospital and get them over to the mall. I'm just joking, but I mean, it just seems like a waste to have a big sign with nothing on it. And
I will take that. I will take that information back to Nuvance, and we'll see what we can come up with and possibly process that through the permit process to have text on both sides of the sign at your suggestion.
Okay.
Mike, I'd be a little bit concerned about that. I think that information that isn't relevant is distracting to the driver. Better, I think, to have no information than something that is distracting.
You know, I would piggyback that, Lou. My thought, Mike, I'm on the same page with you, Mike and Lou. But all the roads leading to that facility, you know, from West Avenue, you have the bridge from Route 7, which you can't really see the full building. If the sign consultant is working with the owner, Nuvance, they should look at all roads leading to that elevation and look at it from all aspects of that building coming, and from an emergency standpoint, from different parts of Norwalk. And then you get a better look on how that building would be looked at when people are driving or those who are passing by in that area. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I also have a comment about signage. Sorry to pile on.
That's okay, JJ, go ahead.
Right, but I think this would be advantageous to the hospital that as you're coming into the city by way of exit 14 over by where the mall over by where it terminates in front of the mall, there is no signage there that indicate that there is a hospital in this area. Like if you take that left turn down West Avenue, you will come upon Maple Street, which, you know, is another byway into the hospital, but there's no indication anywhere along that pathway, you know, to the hospital. So I would love to see more signage along the local way that indicates that there is a hospital in the vicinity.
Even the blue hospital H, the universal sign for H hospital is not in that area?
It's on, I believe it's on the corner of Route 1, not West Avenue.
Okay. I'll take that feedback to them and we'll work with the city to figure out how we can get Public Works to maybe put some signage there.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just add the good suggestion from JJ and there used to be hospital signs on the former wayfinding signs that basically fell apart. You know, they were put up in the late 80s. Those were the wooden signs that had carvings on the top of like a little scene of Norwalk. And I know because I've maintained one at exit 14 for years.
Oh, okay.
With screws and duct tape and try my best to keep it together because I take care of the landscape around there. I donate that. And finally, it just fell apart and just collapsed on the ground. I still have the carved part of the top. But that
so that's what happened to it.
It did have a sign that said Norwalk Hospital, and I think it was turning left, go over Fairfield Avenue. Of course, it didn't continue, so it got you over to Connecticut Avenue, but then there was no, you'd be lost again.
Yeah.
It was not continuous wayfinding, but economic development. Jessica Bonashek has been working on wayfinding. Some new wayfinding you'll see at exits 16 and 15, and those, and there's more to come. So I think having the hospital on that, this is a really good suggestion, because I think wayfinding is important all over the city, of course. All right, I just wanted to add my 2 cents to that.
Thank you.
Excuse me, any other questions or comments? All right, if not, can I have a motion to approve the signage?
Motion to approve.
I'm sorry, did that come from you, JJ?
Yes, it did.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, and
Can we ask the applicant to come back to us with some of the suggestions that have been made? I mean,
Yes.
there were a lot of people making suggestions here this evening on this.
we can. I think the hospital is probably anxious to get this moving. But
I mean, I appreciate that there are signs in place now. It's not like there's nothing there, and we're trying to make this better, right?
Are you suggesting, Tammy, that we wait to approve until they come back to us, or that they come back to us after we approve?
I think I'd like to see them come back to us with the comments that the commissioners have made.
I'm going to take that to mean you'd like to put this off until our next meeting.
Yes, I mean, I think-
Let's see if the commission favors that. That's fine. You want to make a motion to that effect?
Yes.
We have a
yes,
motion on the floor. Can I
I'll
ask?
second it. I'll second the
No,
motion.
before we go to that, JJ, you made the initial motion. Are you willing to withdraw that motion? So that we
Yes, I am.
Okay, now go ahead, Tammy.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we postpone the approval until the applicant comes back to us with feedback on the suggestions that were made this evening.
Okay, and Steve Ferguson seconded that.
Yes, just the elevations and the roadways leading to the hospital, proper markers, whatever the staff decides. We'd like to hear that.
Right. Let's do a roll call on that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, it
Yes,
sounds like what they're asking for is additional signage. Would it be possible to get the approval for what we've presented now so that we can get this signage into production and then make it conditional to where we come back with additional signage proposed as requested?
I understand what you're asking. However, at least one of the comments you heard this evening was whether you have the ability to make some of the letters on the signage, on some of the signage, larger. That would seem to me to preclude our approving it if Tammy's motion is approved.
Well, we're in a comment period now on where the second motion was made, right?
Right, we have a motion on
And
the
it's been
floor.
seconded. So I want to say, I don't think it's necessary to postpone this vote. And I think that all the comments taken under advisement is satisfactory. For me, for the most part, signage looks good. And even though I agree that larger letters might be helpful, I think it's burdensome to go back to the drawing board at this point, because I do think the reverse graphics are a lot more visible than the current signs, and additional signage is where I was heading in terms of additional wayfinding. But I'm not sure they would even know what they would want to do to satisfy us next go around.
Okay, let's hear from the other commissioners.
Well, I'll speak. If a sign consultant's working on a sign for a hospital, they should have some understanding of the landscape of the hospital and the roads leading to that hospital. And if their client doesn't have adequate signage, they should have the means to at least give them some kind of understanding since they're in that business. I actually frequent the hospital on an emergency level at least once or twice a year. And I know Norwalk, but those who are new to Norwalk might not know how to get to the hospital. It's on a hill, and from West Avenue is blocked by a bridge, Route 7, and from Connecticut Avenue to West Avenue, there are some, in Prospect Street, there are some angles that people just can't really readily see. So I'm not an expert when it comes to signage, but I think that a sign company should be able to lead their client into how things should look.
Okay, other comments?
Yeah, I just want to say, in terms of different angles from different streets, I don't know what the sign company doing signs for Norwalk Hospital can do. Isn't what we're asking for is Public Works to put signs on the streets so that, they direct you to the hospital? And that's not something that's the responsibility of Nuvance. That's not something they can do. That has to be done by the city.
That's, Galen, that's certainly one of the things that's been asked, but not the only one. Let's vote on this motion in order to move this forward. We still have a lot of business in front of us. So let's call the question. Let's do a roll call. What you're voting on is holding off on a vote until our next meeting.
Michelle, do you want to do that or you want me to do it? It's fine.
Sure, I can do that. So, Mr. Ferguson,
Let's hold off.
Mr. Owena,
I'm still trying to decide, so come back to me.
Mr. Cantor,
Abstain.
Mr. Mushak,
No, I am for voting on this tonight.
Ms. Jordan Byron. You're,
Yeah, I was on mute, sorry. I understand where Tammy is coming from, in having them present their findings and the, yes, you know what, I will vote to delay it until they come back with, the final plans.
Ms. Wells,
No, I think we should vote on it tonight.
and Mr. Patches.
I agree with Mike and Galen. I think we should vote on this. I think what the applicant is doing is just a matter of branding, and when it comes to improving ways to get to the hospital, it can be done through public works. So we should vote on it tonight.
And Mr. Schulman.
No.
Oh, Mr. Williams, sorry.
Am I
Hold on, we
voting on
have
this?
two,
I haven't voted either.
Oh, sorry.
we have two.
Timmy, and then.
I'm out 1 second. We have
Hector.
Right.
only one alternate seated for the vote.
Right.
Sorry.
And I didn't really get how Hector voted. I'm sorry, it was very low.
Nope.
Hector,
It's
was
a
that a
no.
yes or a no?
It was a no. It should be voted tonight.
It was a
Ms.
no.
Langeles, oh, sorry.
I'm voting in favor of the motion to delay. Thank
And then
you.
Mr. Schulman.
No.
So I believe it failed.
Mr. Rowena hasn't yet, has he? He was waiting, he was deciding.
Mr. Rowena can't decide.
Well, that's called.
I can't
abstention.
really see the point in my,
If it makes you feel better, Richard, I don't think your vote matters.
okay, then I'll abstain.
Okay. Then we're back. Jackie, you want to remake your motion?
No, I voted to delay.
No, I understand. Okay. Oh, all right. I apologize then.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Galen is making the motion to
To approve.
approve.
I'll second, Mike.
Okay, let's put up the draft resolution to approve.
Mr. Chair, Steve has his hand up.
I was just going to make a suggestion in order to move this along, that the motion maybe perhaps consider amending it to approve the sign manual, but that the applicant come back to the commission regarding those specific revisions, because there were some signs that they could begin fabrication on, and maybe they have to alter a couple of them based on some additional feedback, but at least
Would-
meeting
would
them
the-
part way.
Would the person who made the motion and who seconded the motion accept that change?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then any comments on the resolution? All right, if not, let's move to a vote.
right.
And again, Hector, you'll vote on this. Darius, I think I had
I'm on the next
Hector
item,
vote
right?
twice in a row, so you'll vote on the two last public hearing issues if we take them to public hearing. If we take them to a vote.
Understood.
Okay. I apologize for that.
All right.
Okay, let's do a roll call.
Ms. Lane Gallis? You're muted.
Yep, sorry, no.
Mr. Ferguson?
How pointed, Michelle? I say no.
Mr. Cantor?
Same.
Mr. Rowena?
Yes.
Mr. Mushak?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan Byron?
No.
And Ms. Wells?
Yes.
You
Did you get
forgot-
Mr. Patches?
Oh, and Mr. Podges. Sorry.
Yes.
Lou.
Yes.
And Mr. Schulman,
And
yes.
Mr. Shulman.
And that sounds to me as if it passed.
Can we, did you put a line in there, Michelle, yet on the number 4, that condition?
Yeah, I'll draft up the language. I'm not that good on the fly.
Okay.
All right,
But that was the way Steve described it. It was going to say a condition, just for the record, saying that further revisions will be.
no, maybe made and Norwalk Hospital will come back to us.
You got it.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm sorry to be such a stickler, but I do need to specifically know exactly what it is that you're looking to see us increase based on the sign number in the book. Because I'm not familiar with the campus, I'm not exactly sure what hill you're referring to and which emergency letters you want to see bigger. And I also need to know from staff when they follow up with me if those signs can be bigger. From a code perspective, if those signs would be code allowed to be bigger in order for us to make that increase. Because stretching out letters doesn't make them any more legible. You have to make the height bigger. And we've already crammed up the height on the sign. We don't have a whole lot of height left there. There only might be, maybe an inch or so. So some clarification in feedback afterwards would be great.
Okay.
These are vinyl changes. If we're not changing the overall structure and we're just changing the height of a letter with vinyl, with sign vinyl, that's a fairly simple change that can be made very quickly.
Ms. Steele will have the staff get back to you
Okay.
on that in the next couple of days.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have 2 public hearings. So I'm going to begin by explaining how we conduct our public hearings. The applicant and for the first public hearing, that is us, will present their materials. During that presentation, the members of the commission, of course, are, as always, free to ask any questions they have regarding the material. When the presentation is complete, we will invite the public to speak. I suspect there's a fair amount of interest in both of these items. So I would ask that the speakers be as brief as they can be while making all of the points they wish to that are important to them or to any people they represent. We don't set time limits, but again, in fairness to giving everyone an opportunity to be heard, we'd ask that you keep the comments as brief as possible, but also keep in mind that you have only one opportunity to speak, and that this is that opportunity. We ask that you introduce yourself by telling us your name and your home address. Mr. Baker, I believe, will explain at the appropriate time how you can access our platform here to speak publicly. Understand that your comments can be for the staff of the Zoning Commission, for us, for the city, but that this is not a dialogue. We will not be responding to your comments. But once all of the members of the public who wish to speak have done so, probably Mr. Kleppen or Mr. Baker will be given an opportunity to respond to the comments that they've heard. Again, during that process, commission members are welcome to ask any questions they have. When that has been completed, we will close the hearing and move on to action on the application. That action could include approving the project, approving it with changes, disapproving it, or putting off taking action if we feel the need to think about it further. With that, we'll go to the first public hearing, which is 2022-52R, Planning and Zoning Commission, zoning regulation amendments to Article 100, supplementary regulations for business and industrial zones to permit various cannabis uses with associated standards, limitations, and requirements as indicated in the draft regulations. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve Kleppen. And Steve, the first thing I'd ask if you could make that a little bit larger so everyone can read it.
How's that? Is that
That's
okay?
fine.
Okay. So just to give everyone a little bit of background of how we got here and why, and this may go back over a year now, but the state of Connecticut legalized cannabis sales and the production of cannabis within the state of Connecticut. Municipalities were given the option to decline that or accept it, and then place conditions around that and how they wanted to proceed. The city of Norwalk decided that they wanted to go forward with the retail sales of cannabis, and also the potential growing facilities of cannabis as well. And once the city government made that change, they kind of passed the baton to the Planning and Zoning Commission on coming up with the final set of zoning regulations and putting some of those parameters around where these facilities could operate and where. Initially, the state legislation allowed this is specifically for retail establishments, one retail establishment for every 25,000 residents within the municipality. The math at that time worked out to 3 for Norwalk. So that was kind of the working number. Subsequently, the state revised their legislation again and got rid of that cap. But the city felt that 3 was probably plenty at this time for consideration, because no one really knows how it's going to quite function, because it's not anything occurring in the state yet. So that was the kind of the parameters that we worked off of, potentially having 3. Within the enabling legislation for the cannabis sales and for the cultivation, there are a whole series of terms and definitions that are applied. So what we decided to do was grab the ones that would probably be, from a zoning perspective, be potentially administered. So those are the ones you see on the screen now. And it ranges for different types of cultivators to, transporters, to retail establishments, to also the medical marijuana end of it, which is already allowed in the city under certain conditions. So what we put together is this grid, which indicates, here are the different potential cannabis related businesses that may be visible within the city. And this indicates where they can be located and under what type of permit vehicle that they can be located. So they can be potentially permitted by right, not permitted at all, something that would have to come to the commission for a special permit. It just depends on the type of use and the location of where it's going to go. So again, on the left-hand side, the different rows have the different businesses, and on the top right are the various zones where those could potentially be located. We'll get into some of the cultivator and retail part of it in a little bit, but just kind of in summary, the idea being that the retail will be strictly limited to our business 1 and business 2 zones, and that we're going to spend probably a bulk of our time talking about that. And then the cultivator is broken down to different kind of not types, but volumes in terms of their size. So the bigger ones obviously would need to be located within a larger property. So we've targeted those towards industrial zones. And the smaller ones could potentially be located in some of the other areas that allow light manufacturing. It's important to point out that the cultivators are considered manufacturing under the way we look at manufacturing. So that's the way we've treated it. But they, all these uses have very specific conditions and requirements that they have to meet. And some of those were taken from peer communities and also from guidance from the state of Connecticut, as well as guidance from, the city, town council, common council, as well as working with some of the other departments in the city. So the next piece of this just goes through the general conditions that are applicable to all the cannabis establishments, regardless of whether you're a cultivator or you're a retail establishment. So these are the general rules through here. I'm not going to read all those. They are available on the city's website and were distributed to the commission, previously. But I do want to spend a little more time talking about the cultivators and the retailers. The cultivators are, as I mentioned, they're regulated similar to what we would regulate for a manufacturing establishment. There's obviously no consumption of the product on the premises, and there's no retail sales allowed from those cultivation establishments as well. So you can produce the marijuana there, but you can't sell it there and you can't consume it there. There are additional safeguards put in to deal with odor, and because that could be a potential concern, and also around security at any of these facilities, because we want to make sure these are high valued products. We want to make sure that they're safe and they're protected and the facility is protected. So as a part of these applications, they're going to have to submit a security plan, which will be reviewed by the Norwalk Police Department to make sure that, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And that will probably be a pretty detailed review. For the retails themselves, and just it's important to point out that the retailers as well as the dispensaries are kind of lumped into one category, and because the state also looks at them as hybrid uses as well. So part of the legislation, which really didn't affect Norwalk because we don't have any dispensaries at this time, was if you had a dispensary, you could transfer your license to become a hybrid facility where you could sell both the medical marijuana as well as the retail cannabis. But as I mentioned, we don't have any of those existing facilities, but they treat those facilities the same. If and when somebody, for example, decided, I'm going to open up a dispensary facility, and they wanted to convert that to a hybrid license in the future, we still put in the cap of 3, because that was an important point that was brought about as part of the, the prior conversations with council. There was a concern raised, which we're going to spend a little more time in a second on, about the ability of a zoning regulation to place a cap on any type of business, regardless of the cannabis aspect of it. So, you know, it could be the same thing. Could we put a cap on how many shoe stores we want in the city? That's historically been proven to be something you could not do, but this is kind of like its own unique animal. But based on the conversations with the commission at the last meeting, we talked about this. We ran a bunch of different mapping exercises to look at the separation distances and maybe ways where we could max out the number at 3, regardless of whether the cap would be proven illegal or not in the future. So as part of the retail cannabis, there are provisions that we put in to safeguard some of the sites. So number 3 looks at the size of the lot and the width of the lot, with the thought being that a small little strip plaza might not be the best location to have a retail cannabis shop if there is a high demand for traffic and parking. Because the idea being a shared plaza with multiple users, they have that kind of crossover in sharing of parking, where that smaller facility might not do that. We also put in a provision that the facility itself had to be at least 200 feet from a residential zoning district. Doesn't mean the property, but means the building itself. We had put in a provision about not allowing drive-through facilities, but we did get feedback from some operators who said the drive-through facility would actually decrease the parking demand and the traffic demand, because a lot of the orders that are received online. So someone places their order and then they go and pick it up, and it's, they just go through the drive-through. Same thing you would do with a prescription for an antibiotic. At this point, you go to the pharmacy and they have a drive-through facility. So that's something you might want to think of eliminating as you debate the changes as we go forward. And then there are hours of operation that we mimic the liquor laws. So we felt that was something to be considered. And then the number 8 starts to get into the separation distances. And these were arrived at through conversations with, a broad coalition of interest groups within the city. Chiefly we work with the health department and some of the other nonprofits on things that they'd like to see and had concerns with. So there are separation distances from schools, from religious institutions, from sensitive sites. And that's where we spent a lot of time, because you could run the gamut from daycare, treatment facilities, shelters. So obviously there's more vulnerable populations at those places. So we wanted to make sure that, there were safeguards put in place to deal with that. There are also provisions related to signage that come into play. The regulations at the state level, they did a really good job of kind of regulating what the outside of these facilities could look like. Obviously, we do have an issue sometimes in town where they have the smoke shops where they have their paraphernalia displayed right out in the front. That would not be allowed with these type of facilities. Those unfortunately aren't regulated in the same fashion. So you do end up with that, the paraphernalia quite visible. And some people, find that to not be the best look. So the signage for the retail establishments, as well as the aesthetic, it's kind of a muted look. So you don't have that kind of in your face feel that it's something more than what it is. With that, I think it would probably be a good idea to look at the various buffer scenarios. So I'm going to pull those up one by one and just kind of talk to them a little bit and get your feedback on that. You will note that I did not prepare a resolution for tonight, simply because we didn't get a chance to talk about these buffer scenarios, and we gave you 5. So, and it's possible there could be a 6th or a 7th one that you'd want us to look at. So we thought it was probably good to just get that initial conversation out. Also, we haven't heard from the public yet, so we have that aspect to consider. And with the idea we could take action in January, once we reconvene after the holiday. So I'll start with a couple of these. Are you able to see the first map? Is it up yet for you guys?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll leave it zoomed out for now. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to zoom in to read the legend because I'm getting old. So what we did was just do a series of test fits and looked at different sites and tried to apply different metrics. So the first metric is the one we maintained throughout all the scenarios, which was to keep 1,000-foot separation distance from all the sensitive sites. And within that, we tried to pick test fit parcels, and they had to fit all those criteria that were listed in the regulations. Obviously be within the zone, meet those size criteria of the lot size, the lot area. And then you start to look at, okay, if we put the green parcel is a potentially eligible site. Now, that does not mean that that landowner would even allow that. So that's another metric that we can't map, because I talked to several of the larger property owners and they said that was something they weren't going to consider because it conflicted with leases they had with existing tenants. So they're just not going to be something that they entertain. But again, that's not something we can really map or should map. So we just tried to put everybody on a level playing field and apply these different buffers. And with the idea being, with these buffers, we'd like to get that restriction close to a maximum of 3 retail cannabis establishments to be in keeping with what the council kind of laid out for what they'd like to see going forward. So this first scenario looked at 1,000-foot separation distance with a 1 mile buffer between establishments. And as you can see, the green is that 1 mile buffer around this site. And so even though there might be other eligible sites like these over here, they're within that buffer, so they're out. And then you get down to the next potential eligible site is kind of off of Main Avenue. It's centrally located. And then you apply that 1 mile buffer around that site. And then you can see like where these 2 circles meet, all these are eliminated. And then this is a pretty restrictive scenario, because then the only one applying these other metrics that would work is all the way down on Connecticut Ave. So it's only one allowed. So this scenario, I would say, is probably a little bit restrictive.
Hey, Steve.
If you're, yeah.
Did you say the area within the Venn diagram is eliminated? Did I hear that right?
So the area within this would not be allowed, just because it's within. Yeah, because it's within the buffer.
And so are there schools and churches within that Venn?
There could be, but specifically it's within 1 mile of each of these, the overlap. So it's ruled out by that alone.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And so I'm just going to bounce back. I'm going to close this one out unless there's other questions, because otherwise I'm going to have too many windows open, if that's okay. Hearing none. Okay. So I'll start at the top, and then I see there was a fourth one. This was just another scenario. This one applied a 2 mile buffer to this. So what you can see here, we picked a test site, which was really the farthest north site that we could apply this to, just to potentially look at it from what's the maximum number of establishments that we could put in here. So the green line represents a 2 mile buffer. So if for example, somebody said, I'm going to put my retail establishment right up here. So automatically all these potentially other sites, even though they meet the criteria, they're automatically out because they're within the 2 mile buffer. And then, so you could end up with theoretically with 3 under this scenario, because you have a potential site here as well as a potential site down there. So if anytime you, like, for example, had we picked this site as our test site, that shifts that green line further this direction and potentially further in this direction. So it eliminates sites going in the other directions as well. And the parameters applied to this one were 500 feet from the sensitive sites, and the one that carries through is the 1,000 feet from the schools, youth and rehab. So that would be schools, could be daycares, it could be anything along those lines, and then any other rehab or recovery facility within that area. Any question on this scenario? My advice would be after we go through this would be to take some time after the meeting and after we get feedback from the public and just look at them again. And if anything doesn't make sense, please reach out to me and I'm happy to run through those with you a second time. And again, this is similar to the last scenario. The only change is we went from 2 miles to 1.75. So I think what I just asked Amelia, who was very patient with me, was just keep running numbers and see what we come up with and see if we can get as close to 3 as possible. So you can see there's a lot of overlap where there's areas that are automatically eliminated. So it does reduce that quite a bit. I think some of these are just going to be too restrictive if the goal is to try and allow spaces for these businesses to operate at some point in the future.
So Steve, is the consistent thing across each of these the 1,000 feet buffer from schools and 500 from other sensitive sites?
Yeah, and I think we ran a scenario where we did 1,000 from the sensitive sites as well, but I'll pull that one up too. So this one again is very similar to the last two, where it's a 1.5 mile buffer. So it's when you change that, the easy way to think of that piece of it, when you change that green buffer, the green line from 2 miles to 1.5 miles or 1 mile, it's just anytime you increase that buffer, you're just eliminating potential areas and making it, potentially making more difficult to open or more restrictive depending on which way you want to view it.
Yeah, like theoretically, like if the first one to open up is in the middle, if we have the 2 mile buffer,
yes,
chances are you're done. They're going to have
we talked about that quite a bit. That was like you said, if somebody was being really cutthroat, they would just pick the centralmost location with the biggest buffer applied, and they're the only game in town at that point.
Right. And that's where, if I'm understanding the map correctly, that's where a lot of the most eligible parcels are going to be, is in the middle of the city from this map's perspective, right?
Potentially, yeah. There's a big chunk through this
like right there. Yeah, that's what I was looking at, the middle corridor. And then once you drop there, like just you can eyeball where those arrows, like that circle cuts out the Post Road towards Westport, probably cuts into Post Road towards.
Well, just so you know, the blue part, can you see the light blue parcels here? Those are those parcels remain no matter what scenario you run. Those are the eligible parcels based on the criteria we put into the regulations. It's just when the green circles expands, it just eliminates them further.
Well, that's what I was saying. The moment you let's say you pick in the middle there, the middle where you just had your mouse.
Right.
The green circle is going to shift 2 miles around that and pretty much cut out every other potential option in the city. So just folks think about that. If you want a larger radius, you're implicitly saying, you may want less options in the city and less revenue in the city.
Yeah, and what makes it, like I said, what makes it very tricky is the property owners who are not going to allow it, even if they can. So you don't exactly know how many of those are, and that's going to really impact the low number of locations. And I don't know what the magic number for the city of Norwalk is going forward. Who knows, maybe 20 years from now that it's not looked at the same way. One time alcohol sales were looked at the same way as marijuana. Maybe in the future it's not. So I just can't, it's hard to predict that piece of it. And I'll just run through the last one to show you. And this was a different run, but similar. So here was one where the buffer for the sensitive sites was bumped up to 750. And then 1,000 was maintained for the schools and the rehab. And the buffer was, I believe, a mile buffer around those. So here's just another scenario. So to Nick, to your point, you have this overlap right here. Because what we tried to do was pick the farthest points on the eligible parcels to try to realize the greatest separation distance or realize the greatest potential for distances between them. So even right here, you get, these are automatically eliminated by overlap. These are eliminated by overlap, and even over here. So again, if you want us to run any other variant of this, it's very easy for us to do that. If you come up with something we haven't thought of, we just try to give a mix of playing with those separation distances to give you guys a sense of what you're looking at when you change those parameters. Is there anything you'd like me to pull back up or regulations to pull back up? I can stop sharing as well if you prefer.
No, let's keep moving forward.
Okay, and I don't really have anything else. I think that's an overview of the regulations, and then the big question you guys will have to answer pending comments from the public is what you guys want to do with those distances. And again, I would recommend you take a little time to just let that sink in and think about it a little more, because it's just, there are a lot of variables that affect, the final outcome.
We have any more questions for Steve before we open it up to the public?
I'll just do some housekeeping stuff, Louis, just so we can kind of get this out of the way for prior to the hearing. We referred it out to, I believe, the Harbor Management Commission, WestCog, all of our surrounding neighboring towns, and Connecticut Deep. So I'll pull up Connecticut Deep's recommendation real quick to get entered into the record. We did not receive any comments back from Harbor to say that it was inconsistent with the Harbor Management Plan. And WestCog did find it of some regional importance, so they did refer it out to the other towns. So it kind of double dipped there, so they were well aware of it. And I believe you guys have just received comments back from the town of Wilton. And then here is comments from Deep, finding it generally consistent with the Coastal Management Act, just for you guys to have entered into the record. And that is it for that kind of housekeeping.
Okay.
And with that, so members of the public, if you'd like to speak on behalf of this application, you can use the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. Just click it once. And if you're dialed in on a phone, you can hit *9. We have Mr. Bonifant.
Did you call on me?
We did, Richard.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
I just thought he was rattling off who it was. Good evening, Richard Bonifant, 17 Park Hill Avenue. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Hey, first off, thanks for doing the work. I'm certainly not in favor of anything next to me on Westport Avenue, but that's all right. But one thing I just wanted to point out to you guys is that I see your the building can't be closer than 200 feet from a residential thing. That's not, and you guys explained that it's not the property, it's the building. I get that part. But on the other part where it says 1,000 feet of a child daycare center or nursery, preschool, kindergarten, and all these other sensitive areas. I just want you to I wanted to point out to you that while you're looking for a spot that it might fit. The other side of the coin says, once you put it there, in perpetuity, you'll never be able to put a daycare center within if it's 1,000 feet, you got a 2,000-foot circle radius or 2,000-foot diameter circle that you can never put a daycare, a kiddie gym, a church. Because once the cannabis establishment is there, then you're going to have to deny somebody who wants to put a daycare or an adult daycare place or a kiddie gym or something like that. So you got to be real careful here that you're blocking off future uses just by putting that there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And anyone else from the public, if you'd like to speak, use the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. You can just click it once.
Hello.
Can hear you.
Hi, this is John Levin from 249 Chestnut Hill Road in Norwalk. I don't know if my name is appearing as Nancy Chapman, but in any case, it's John Levin. I have a quick question. How many liquor stores are there in Norwalk currently? And are there similar setback zoning requirements for liquor stores for sensitive sites and distance from schools and so forth? That's a question.
Yeah, John, generally it's just not we're not going to respond. We wait for all the comments to come in and then we'll reply.
Okay, so anyway, that's just my question. I'm wondering, what's the population of liquor stores in the city and what kind of requirements are they required to meet with respect to setback and location and so forth? Be good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Please use the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. Seeing none further, Mr. Schulman.
All right. Let's wait just one more minute to see if there's anyone else who wishes to be heard. No one? Okay. Then let's turn it back to Steve.
Sure, and I'll be very brief. Mr. Bonifant raised a good question, but it wouldn't work in reverse on that because like say a new daycare center wanted to go 1,000 feet or 500 feet from the cannabis establishment. The daycare center doesn't have that separation distance requirement from another business. It's just the retailer for the cannabis would. So technically at that point, I think the retailer would be technically non-conforming, but it wouldn't have any kind of impact on their business or anything like that. So I don't think that restriction would work in reverse. I do not know how many liquor stores are within the city currently. There is no cap on them. A lot of communities, and I imagine Norwalk did at one time, have caps or restrictions and separation distances, because a lot of communities still do for that kind of use. So my guess is over time, a lot of that, once, if and when it becomes more norm or more accepted in society, then those restrictions I would, very well could get loosened up over time, but that's probably a good ways down the road from where we are today.
Steve,
That was it.
Brian, I think someone it looks like has raised their hand since, I don't know if you guys want to go to that person or not now.
Is there someone else, Brian?
Yeah, I think they just had raised their hands after Steve had started replying to me. Ginger, you just have to, there you go.
Hello,
There you are.
We can hear you.
yes, this is Larry Katz. I live at 4 Daskins Lane in Norwalk. I've been a lifelong resident of Norwalk. And I'm very concerned about what's going on right now in the variety stores that are selling the THC. And they're not supposed to be selling that. And we actually went into one of the stores just to check it, and they didn't have it out in front, but they went in the back and got some. And we talked to the police, and they said we've sent them eight different times. We've fined them for selling it illegally, and they're still open and still doing business. And my concern is long term, what kind of effect this is going to have on the community as a whole of our youth and the rest of the people that frequent there, especially the stores. Store owners are not going to like having one of these stores next to them. So just think of that in the long term. And you can mark my words that this is not going to be the Norwalk that I grew up in, where people can raise a family and be sure that kids are kept safe. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I'm sitting.
Was there someone else there, Brian, who wanted to speak?
Believe so. There's somebody else raising their hands. It looks like that's it, Mr. Sean.
Okay. All right, Steve. I believe you were interrupted.
No, I was finished, so that no further comment from me.
Okay. Well, do we have further questions for Steve regarding what he shared with us this evening?
I mean, it's not so much a question as a consideration of the drive-through element of that actually reducing and bar stuff. So what are folks' thoughts on that?
I believe we should allow them.
Well, I think you should look at Chick-fil-A. Is it going to be as popular as that on Connecticut Avenue? And if it is, then you really better look at how much drive-through they have, because that has gotten better since the pandemic has lightened, but what a mess.
I think we should allow drive-throughs. I get all my
I
prescriptions.
think also the site.
I get all my prescriptions at a drive-through at CVS. You know, it's just more convenient, and I'm not parking there and I'm not walking in. It does make it quicker, and it does alleviate traffic. But Tammy's right, you know, you have to be sure there's enough room in the drive-through to accommodate whatever kind of traffic is expected.
And I have a question about drive-through, but just on the other side. Like, are they checking IDs to see if the recipient is old enough to participate in this exchange?
Well, they check the IDs when I go to CVS. If I get something that's a controlled substance, they check.
Okay, thank you.
Just keep in mind too that the application, if and when you get one, would be a special permit application. So all these kind of specific site issues, you can weigh in on that point. You know, whether the queuing of the drive-through is appropriate, is the site, you know, however they laid out the site, all those things, you get another bite at the apple, even though you're just looking at the regulations at this point.
How would commission members like to proceed on this? Is there more information that you'd like to see developed by the staff for us to discuss?
Like I said, if you come up with some, after taking another look at the maps, if you come up with something you'd like us to look at, it's really easy for us to turn that around quickly. So I'm happy to have somebody take care of that and get it back out to you guys to look at.
Well, I have to say, I did have a problem with the maps, just trying to figure out like what street, what the borders of each neighborhood was within those Venn diagrams. And I'm hoping your next presentation will be more of a clarity in neighborhood.
I can take a look at that, but so if you look at the regulation piece itself, it's the business 1 and business 2 zones within that. That's where the retail would be allowed specifically. So those are the only areas where it could be. So it's right on Main Ave or right along Route 1 where the business.
Maybe if you just added a few key streets on that, it would be helpful for people.
Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
it would.
Sure.
I was trying to figure out, okay, is that Westport Avenue over here? Is that Connecticut Avenue there?
Steve, make them, if you can make them as sharp as possible with some street, send them back out to us so that we can print them out for ourselves and go over them very carefully.
Certainly.
Okay,
I just want to make a comment. Can I make a comment?
sure, go ahead.
I actually have been around families who lost their children to overdosing over the past 20 years in Norwalk. So I am sensitive to the parents who spearheaded the nonprofits and the pursuit of keeping Norwalk safe. With this matter, it becomes a legal matter. And I'm happy that we're able to listen to the public to get their thoughts on it, because their thoughts and opinions are weighted amongst us. So even though we don't address some of their concerns, we definitely do internalize it and we do talk about it. So I just wanted to say that our heart does go out to all the families in Norwalk for their perseverance in trying to keep Norwalk safe.
All right, Steve, we'll put this on the our next agenda, but we will close the public hearing to public comment. And I would advise if there are other members of the public listening who still wish to comment on this matter, I would suggest sending an email to the staff that they can share with us to help us in reaching a decision on how this ought to be implemented. And with that, we'll again hold the decision on this open, but close the public hearing to public comment. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda.
Could I just ask Steve one more question, please?
Sure, go ahead, Tam.
Are there any other cities in the state of Connecticut that are already up and running that have any type of data on, whether car accidents go up, whatever type of data, how many people are actually buying at these dispensaries, whatever it might be, because that might be helpful.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so in the state of Connecticut. I don't know if Massachusetts has that data out there. We could try to find that out. I had forwarded you a couple of emails that came off of the Connecticut Planners Listserv today. And some of that pointed back to what was going on in Massachusetts, which is similar to the information I'd heard in the past about, like, initially when the facilities opened, there was a big rush because it was, pent up demand and there was only one game in town. But then as more facilities opened, the traffic and the parking normalized over time, and then it just kind of functioned like any other business. But I haven't heard about data in terms of, like, if you're talking about accidents related to consumption, I have to do a little more research on that.
Okay.
Colorado has a lot of safety data.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next public hearing, Darius. You'll be able to vote on this. This is 2022-30R, Planning and Zoning Commission zoning regulation amendments to Article 42, accessory dwelling units, to revise the accessory dwelling units ADU regulations per recommendations from the Economic and Community Development Committee and as indicated in the draft regulations. Steve, is this you or Brian?
That's me.
Okay, Brian.
All right, so I'll pull up, if you'll remember, back in September, you as the commission adopted new accessory dwelling unit regulations in response to Public Act 21-29, which was passed by the state legislature last year. And so what we did was essentially permitted detached ADUs with various restrictions as far as increase some of the allowances for attached accessory dwelling units. You had also voted to opt out of Public Act 21-29, at least your portion of the opt-out. And then as we started going through the Common Council process for them to consider opting out, the ECD committee had requested that you first adopt regulations and they'd take a look at those and then consider, going forward with their next step for opting out. With that, ECD had reviewed what you had passed and then asked for a couple changes to be made, which we've put into this proposed text here. The biggest one is really just increasing the minimum side yard setbacks required for detached ADUs in the AAA and AA zone to match their respective setbacks, which already exist for both single-family dwellings as well as detached accessory dwellings such as garages and sheds. So that was the first request, which you can see here in red text. And then the second text, which we had talked about, I believe, at the last meeting or the meeting prior, was the landscape and buffer requirements. So we had included that in red text here. So essentially for detached accessory dwelling units, you'd be required to put in some sort of landscaped or fenced buffer around the structure, which provides just some additional buffer from neighboring properties. So those were the two changes that we had included as part of this proposed text for you guys to consider tonight. And I know the ECD committee had asked for you guys to also consider making detached accessory dwelling units permitted via site plan review. At one of your previous meetings, you took a straw poll and kind of decided that that wasn't the path you wanted to go. So that was not included in the proposed text here. And that's pretty much it.
Comments from the commissioners before we open it up to the public?
And those, can you just remind me on those setbacks changes? Those are now more restrictive than what they were originally?
Correct. The original text that you guys had passed and that is in effect today is a 10-foot minimum setback from your sides for all zones. So you'd be getting more restrictive in the AAA and AA zones.
And we're going to vote on each of these pieces, I imagine, separately.
Yes. Yeah.
We can depending on what the commission wants. Yes.
Brian, the setbacks that are proposed now, the 30 feet minimum, that's what would be for any other auxiliary structure, like a.
Correct. If you're in the AAA zone today and you wanted to build a detached garage, your minimum setback from the side would be 30 feet. Same thing if you're building a new house, your minimum setback is 30 feet.
Okay.
See, Darius's hand is up.
Yes, I know that I believe Richard was interested in having the conversation around the site plan review again. So I was just seeing where we were going to go with that.
Let's I assume Richard hasn't said anything yet. We should wait until we have our discussion after we've heard from the public.
Now, I just want to mention that we already voted on that, right?
All right.
Steve is suggesting that, from what I understand, that that was more of a straw poll than a public hearing.
official.
action. Am I
We
correct
actually
in that,
voted on
Steve?
it twice. Voted on that.
Right.
proposal
Right,
twice.
so if, yeah, so when you had originally adopted this language that's in effect today, the proposal came up, I think both for a site plan review requirement and then it became a special permit requirement. And
Right.
both of those were ultimately not approved. And then as it went through the ECD process, they had asked for the site plan review to be reconsidered, in which you did a straw poll, so not a formal vote, in which that was not looked favorably upon by you. So it was not included in this proposed text here.
Okay, good. So what we're now considering is what is in this text, right?
I don't believe that's the case. This is a new zone we're looking at. And I think that I still, as a commissioner, have the right to request an amendment to it.
I believe you do, Richard. But let's.
But I'm not doing that now. I'm waiting until after the hearing.
Right. Are we ready then to invite the public to speak? All right, sounds as if we are. Brian, you want to explain to the members of the public how they can access the site?
Sure. So for anyone from the public, if you'd like to speak on this application, you could hit the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. And if you're dialed in on a phone, you would hit *9. Again, that's just the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. You just click that once. I don't see anyone on the phone, but if you were, you'd hit *9. There we go. We have Ben.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. My name is Ben Handpeter. I live at 262 East Avenue. I have some comments written down here, which were pretty general, kind of covering the draft regulations in their totality, but I know that you're just voting on the amendment today. So I think I'll scrap my written comments and just add a little bit. I just want to say, in general, I think that the city should be trying to incentivize ADU construction. So it's disappointing to see these draft regulations becoming more and more restrictive, especially since their starting point was already more restrictive than the law passed by the state. Norwalk really has to adopt an all of the above approach to housing, in my opinion, which has to include ADUs to increase density in a lot of the single family neighborhoods in a way that's consistent with their current zoning. And the more impositions you put on interested property owners, the fewer ADUs you're going to see constructed. I think in a previous commission meeting some months ago, the existing ADU regulations were discussed, and I think I remember that the number of ADUs built in Norwalk over the last 30 years is really tiny. So I think that's demonstrated itself to be a failure. And I really think that the city ought to swing the other way and make it as easy as possible, frankly, to build ADUs. They serve a lot of benefits that I don't think I need to take the time to elaborate on here. I think you are all already aware of that. So yeah, to sum up, I want to see the regulations be more flexible, and I hope to see the Common Council vote to not opt out before the end of this year. Thank you.
Next, we have Diane.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Diane Loricella. I live at 21 Little Fox Lane in West Norwalk, which is one of the sites of what could occur if we had a more progressive and proactive ADU amendments. I agree with Mr. Henpeter. I hope that you have had some time to read either a letter to the editor I wrote or a document I sent to the commission for this evening. In all due respect, I do not feel that I have been heard. I have been attempting to help this commission and the staff especially in looking at different options throughout the summer. And I know that this has been like a hot button issue, but because of the restrictions that you have continued to be placing on this particular regulation 118-420, I again ask that this go back to the drawing board. Quite frankly, I'm not sure if the issue and the problem is that if you don't pass something to this month, that the council, maybe you're afraid that they will not opt out. I am not opposed to us opting out, but only if we have more progressive and proactive and flexible amendments. So my point is, why are we in a big rush here? According to Mr. Baker and the research he did initially, we have only had 270 attached ADUs since 1984. There's a reason why that's not happening, but instead, and if any of you deny this, I would be very surprised. Instead, we have a proliferation of illegal apartments throughout Norwalk. There's not much enforcement. There's all kinds of reasons and excuses why that hasn't happened. So let's really embrace the purpose of this that you wrote up, and I was so thrilled, and I've said it before, the purpose and intent, the first paragraph of these amendments are to be lauded, but then the rest of what you placed as far as the important subsections make me wonder why you are not telling us or not making this happen. And in other words, your purpose and intent is not truthful. I hope that you have also seen the YouTube videos or had a chance to do your own due diligence, commissioners and staff, about some of the restrictions you put on there related to tiny homes and wheeled homes. I definitely understand why we wouldn't want to have a trailer park scenario, but you'll never get that if you really understand what tiny homes are and what prefabricated homes are. They allow there to be a reduction in the price of the home. But if you're going to force people to build on site always with a foundation, always from scratch, it's going to increase the price, and then you will get fewer options. Also, I still ask, and because as Mr. Attorney Rowena said, any of you could ask that each of the detailed items be amended. You don't have to go with just what's in red. I believe you can actually, upon further review, ask, as an example, that you allow for detached homes 850 or 900 square feet, not 700. It is too small. I also ask why we do not have income controls or at least goals, so that we don't, some of you, including Mr. Chairman, have said, oh, these will all be so expensive. Well, then that means that you fail in your mission here, because if any of you read what the state legislature put forth, they define what affordability is. I think it's a third or fourth item in the definitions, and they talk about the income levels. So there is no provision that I've seen, and I may be mistaken, for income controls or even goals for income, because we want affordability as well. But you're causing these buildings with all of your restrictions because you're afraid, apparently fearful, that you're boosting the price from the get-go. I also wanted to ask, did you or the staff have an independent home builder, a neutral home builder that could do a detailed cost analysis of the different scenarios of this currently written bill versus some tweaking of increasing the square footage or allowing front yard. I haven't seen it, and I would like that question answered, because if you have not done it, then I think this needs to go back to the drawing board, and that the staff need to hire or find someone that could answer this so that you commissioners could have an informed vote, because that's the part of democracy, having informed votes. There is hopefully most of you or your children will never need or be desperate for affordable housing. I am, and I know a lot of seniors that are as well. I know many of you have experienced challenges with the expensive and ever increasing rents in this city. I'm hoping one day to afford to own a place, but right now I'm renting. I ask, as lastly, we'll wrap up, the town of Fairfield has a flyer. Once you decide, whatever you do decide about ADUs, I will bring in or somehow get to the staff a very important public outreach flyer so that people can begin to think about having an ADU once this city decides what they want to do. I also want to draw your attention to, as I've said before, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, because when I viewed the amended side yard increased details, to me, it's starting to sound again like the redlining that some of our parts of town have done, even though no one wants to talk about it. In essence, that is what is happening. Now, I believe we can have controls so that a more flexible ADU, in the way that I have suggested in the past and others have, has controls, including we need enforcement. I'm not saying we want to have this blow up. It won't, but it's so restrictive. There are many places in Newark where the front yards are vast. And yet, because of this myopic, in my opinion, across the board fear that this commission and maybe the staff were told to develop these, I'm very disappointed. Not for the same reason Mr. Kites is, but I am disappointed. I will say I am very happy that you added buffers. I think that was so important. I really do think that was terrific. I think if this commission decides to have any kind of notification to neighbors, that it only go as far as having a posted sign outside in the front yard, not make a potential owner go through very expensive lawyers and have to file all kinds of forms. I think it should be as of right with some conditions, definitely buffering, etc. I want to tell you that you need to go back to the drawing board. Also, because we're not encouraging, and at every aspect we should. It shouldn't just be Mr. Cantor, and it's been me before Mr. Cantor, and that is we need to encourage across the board for every kind of developed construction, clean energy, efficiency, solar panels. Those should just become something every regulation we have. And I'm hoping it will change with our renovated regulations next year. And then I just want to make sure I have it all. The issue again related to the prohibited structures, that really needs to change, because it means to me that either the staff or this commission has not done their homework. And when I hear, and I have a lot of respect for our director, but when I hear Mr. Kleppen more than once state about the aesthetics, that makes me think of much of what I've read in The Color of Law. And I'm hoping it is not the influence from New Canaan that Mr. Kleppen brought with him. I love architecture. I love homes to look good. But when one uses the issue of aesthetics, it's the same thing as when people say the character of their community. And I live in West Norwalk now. I've lived all over the city. I ask that you do not go forward with this tonight, because it's not ready for prime time and I don't feel heard. And I know a lot of seniors that I represent here don't feel heard and they feel like they have to move out of Norwalk because of this. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you all very much, but let's make sure you put yourself in the shoes of people like me that are desperate to find affordable housing and desperate for my friends who own 1 or 2 acre homes that would like to live in the ADU in the back and then rent out their homes or something to that effect. But with these restrictions, it's not going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's you again, John.
Hi, this is John Levin from 249 Chestnut Hill Road in Norwalk. And I just want to thank the first 2 speakers. I was quite moved by their commentary. And I found their arguments to be profoundly compelling. Frankly, I wish both of these speakers were able to serve on this particular commission in order to help get their own viewpoints affected as part of our city's policy for ADUs. You know, it really seems like to me that ADUs are an excellent solution to any residential community that is seeking to increase its housing supply, particularly affordable housing supply. And also, what a great way they are for older homeowners, or frankly, any homeowner, to simply improve the efficiency of the property that they own by allowing for better use, or in their view, their own view, better and higher use of the land by making an ADU an option. And I think we also have to recognize that household structures really have changed dramatically over time, that we're not really looking at the kind of Leave It to Beaver family with a mom and a dad and 2.2 children as being, you know, the only type of household that we want our city to be accepting. I think that we have to recognize that there are extended families and other relationships and other situations where an in-law or a parent or a cousin or a niece or a nephew would like to cohabit with a family, or frankly, just friends. So ADUs are a terrific way to do that. And I really hope that the restrictions that are contemplated by the current proposal are reduced. I find the size restrictions to be profoundly arbitrary. I don't quite understand. I would love to hear an explanation for why those size restrictions of 700 or 1,000 square feet are appropriate or applicable. I think they're not. I think they should be significantly larger in order to create more opportunities. Also, as the previous speaker mentioned, the prohibited structures also seem to be profoundly arbitrary. I would love to hear an explanation for why those structures would be considered to be unacceptable. So anyway, just to sum it up, I think ADUs are a great solution. They're exactly what a diverse city like Norwalk should be encouraging, and that we can be encouraging. And I really hope that the restrictive policy that's contemplated currently is just simply discarded, and you guys go back and find a far more compelling arrangement for homeowners to be able to develop and access ADUs. My wife is here with me also, and she wants to speak. Is she able to, or what should we do?
No, she can speak.
Okay, great. My name is Diane Keefe and I live at 249 Chestnut Hill Road. I just wanted to give 2 stories. One is a neighbor of ours who had a very large building on their property, and they were unable to use it as an accessory apartment, and they actually lost their house in foreclosure as a result of not being able to afford the mortgage and the city taxes. That's number one. And so I would love to see that, just if the exterior envelope of the building, even if it's, 2,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet, that they should be able to develop whatever they've got if it doesn't change the way it looks from the street. That's number one. Number two is I have a sister who lives in Massachusetts and had to redevelop the home that we grew up in so that she could afford to live in that town. And she made it into a 2-family in what was a 1-family half-acre neighborhood. And, you know, they have had people, she has had people living in that building envelope who, you know, maybe wanted to have their kid finish in a Cohasset High School, it's Cohasset, Massachusetts, you know, rather than having to move out of town after they sold their house. And so I really think that this kind of flexibility, along with the energy efficiency and solar regulations and heat pumps and insulation requirements, really need to be hardwired into the regulations going forward. We cannot afford to just redo the regulations based on square footage. It really needs to be looked at in terms of what kind of new building we are putting in place from a climate change and energy cost point of view, so that people will be more able, especially elderly people, will be more able to afford the building envelopes that they currently occupy. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if anyone else would like to speak, use the raise your hand tool. It is at the bottom of your screen. Mr. Bonifant.
Hi, Rich Bonifant, round 2 here, 17 Park Hill Avenue. And, you know, thanks for listening to all the people. I guess I'm thinking a little different here. I would hope that you make the restrictions as stringent as possible. It's not to say that you don't have good intentions, but there's a huge difference between a AAA zone with an acre property and the B residence zone where like you got a 55 by 100 lot. All right. On smaller lots, if you put an accessory apartment either attached or detached, you're just going to be creating all kinds of on-street parking problems and fights with neighbors and people parking in front of each other's homes. And there's going to be a lot of issues that goes with that. The premise is being all sold as keeping families together and all that, but in the end, somebody's going to rent it out and collect rent on their back apartment. So what happens? I'm glad that you got it in there that the owner's got to live in one of them. So what happens when they don't? And you know that's going to happen, right? There's going to be a lot of situations where like, hey, the owner's renting out both apartments and he's living someplace else. You know that's coming. So you're going to have to deal with, what do you do next? Do you evict both tenants? Do you fine the landlord $99 a day, or do you knock down the accessory apartment? I mean, somebody's got to figure that out. Look, the premise that if you keep building so many apartments and more housing, that the price of rent's going to go down, I think you're fighting an uphill battle here. And I don't think that, you know, you just can't trash the town with so many apartments that you're thinking like, oh, now I can afford one. I don't think it's going to work that way. All you're going to have is high density, and the rents are still going to be where they are. So, and, you know, I'm just going to say this, that a lot of people refer to that master plan, but let me tell you, the master plan had one huge failing, and it never said what the population goal of Norwalk is. Nobody's addressing that. Like, how many people do you want here? And that's got to be like part of somebody's discussion. Okay. And thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else, if you'd like to speak, you could use the raise your hand tool. Laura?
Thank you, Brian. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So, commissioners, I just wanted to briefly come and thank you all for your work on this.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you just give us your name and address, please?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Nora Najelski-Eichner. I'm at 7 Outer Road. And I am speaking to you today just to do the courtesy of thanking you for your work, but letting you know why I will be voting not to allow the city to opt out when this comes in front of the council next week. So very much in line with, I think, a number of the other public comments you have heard. Norwalk is facing a tremendous affordable housing crisis, as quite frankly is all of the state of Connecticut, as is all of the country. And that crisis is driven at its most fundamental level by a lack of units. We do not, the most recent estimates that I could find from Freddie Mac are that across the nation, we're short around 4 million units for the population we have. We cannot tackle affordability without more units. In order to keep Norwalk as diverse and interesting as it is, one of the things we're going to have to do is find ways of adding units within neighborhoods that are currently zoned for larger lots. I think that ADUs serve a tremendous purpose of allowing us to support a growing community, support our young people who want to live in nice homes and our seniors who want to stay in their homes, while also beginning the process, the complicated, multifaceted, multi-solution kind of process of increasing affordability or increasing our number of affordable units. So I unfortunately, while I certainly respect, again, the thought that has gone into this, I find the less restrictive state law to be preferable for Norwalk at this point. So anyway, like I said, I really just wanted to acknowledge, I know that you have put in tremendous time, and I didn't want my vote next week to be in any disrespect to the thought that you have put into this. So thank you all very much for your work, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you about housing expansion in Norwalk and how we all seek to achieve our goals around increasing affordability. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if anyone else is looking to speak, you can use the raise your hand tool at the bottom of your screen. Seeing none, Mr. Schulman.
Okay, then we'll turn it back to you, Brian.
Sure. So I will share my screen. I didn't send you guys this memo. I was working on it today, just kind of going over some of the kind of topics going around ADUs. All right. So again, this revision that was proposed tonight was mostly at the request of the ECD committee. So this was kind of just drafted on their behalf. And again, for you guys to consider. And so kind of one of the things that was sort of recurring was sort of this idea that we're being more restrictive than the state. And I guess in some terms we are, but in some terms we are not being more restrictive than the state. So in terms of zones where you guys have allowed them, we have allowed them across the board in every zone in the city, detached and attached, where the primary use of the structure is a single family home. So under the state language, you could actually restrict this down to as few as one zone if you chose. So in that sense, we are being extremely permissive with ADUs. And then the other portion of that is actually the affordable component of ADUs. So if you actually, if the city opts out of or opts into the state language, you cannot require an ADU to be an affordable ADU. That right is no longer allowed by the city. So opting out actually preserves that right going forward. So you can designate these ADUs as affordable going forward. We obviously allowed them in detached structures.
Hey, Brian,
Yep, go
can
ahead.
you go over that affordable piece again? I'm not
Sure. So the state language expressly says that a municipality cannot require an ADU to be an affordable accessory apartment. And
at
that-
the
so-
state level. So by opting out of the local into the state, you can no longer, if we choose to, at the future point in time, change those to be affordable ADUs or whatever funding may come about for that could not be applied in that situation.
Right. So if you opt into the state language, you no longer have the ability to require an ADU to be an affordable ADU.
Can we do that today if we on our own,
Yes.
if we
So-
wanted to?
Yeah, you can deed restrict these as affordable units. And where that could come in handy is, right now, municipalities, in order to be exempt from 830G, you have to have the 10% affordable housing component. That 10% number is subject to change. Who knows in the future if they up that number from 10% of your units up to 15% of your units. So right now, yes, Norwalk has more than 10% of the units as affordable, but we wouldn't comply if that goes up to 15 or 20%. So it's one consideration in sort of that fight to increase as much affordable housing as possible. The next,
Sorry, to be clear, I think, what are we, 12% or
we're
13%?
just over 13.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next is the minimum floor size. So this one comes up a lot. So 700 was chosen because that's the existing standard that we had and that you guys kind of felt comfortable with a detached ADU being. The state language says that an ADU can be 30% of the net floor area of your principal dwelling or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. As far as, the term arbitrary and which number is arbitrary, even the state language as 1,000 square feet is an arbitrary number. There's no magic number to how big an accessory apartment can be. A lot of zoning at the end of the day is arbitrary numbers. But for the 700 square foot number, we set that out. There's no minimum percentage of your home that an ADU can be. So what that means is a 700 square foot ADU actually gives smaller homeowners a bigger ADU than they could build per the state language. The only time that 700 becomes more restrictive is for homes that are over 2,333 square feet. So we're actually being pretty forgiving there. For setbacks, again, the idea that you can't build them in your front yard. The idea with that is if you look at sort of any urban design standards anywhere, the principal dwelling is supposed to be sort of front and center on your property. That goes for multifamily developments you'll see down on Monroe Street and Chestnut Street. And we kind of carried that same concept over to ADUs. Your single family home is supposed to be sort of the front and centerpiece of the property, and the ADU is supposed to be accessory to that, either next to it or to the rear. And that's sort of just kind of how we carried it over. I mean, here's examples from AARP showing ADUs. They're all located to the side or to the rear of your single family home. And then again from Desegregate CT. Here's your single family home, ADUs located to the rear, located to the side, located to the rear. And then the last thing where we were restrictive, and again, this isn't something you're looking at because we already passed it, was the height. That was one part where we're more restrictive just because the state language said these can be built as tall as your single family home. In Norwalk, we let you build a 35-foot high single family home, which we think if an ADU is 35 feet high, it's a little tall. No longer really becomes accessory at that point. So that's why we lowered the height requirement there. Trying to think what I missed from comments. Oh, and then just sort of affordable housing, or affordable, the cost of construction. Yes, we look at the cost of construction of these. We didn't hire anybody to also look at the cost of construction. Usually those are pretty easy to find for how much these units cost. we ballpark these to be somewhere in the 100,000 to 200,000 square foot range for construction. They are not cheap to construct. For manufactured homes, we do let you put manufactured homes on. It's really just the trailers we don't permit. We kind of don't want people sort of living in what is a mobile structure, not a permanent structure based on, if we hand you a permit, we kind of need to be able to give you a permit and expect that where you're putting this is staying in that one spot, where if you can move this over your yard, it kind of creates a disaster for permitting purposes. It doesn't have to be built on a foundation. It could be just placed on a slab. So we kind of captured the manufactured home component of that. So those are allowed. It's really just the trailers that are not.
Galen, you have a question?
I have a question, Brian. When you talk about an affordable unit, that's sort of a term of art. How are you defining affordable unit?
So the state, I believe in their terminology for an affordable accessory apartment, it is people who spend no more than 30% of their income. And I believe who are making 80% of the state median income, if I'm remembering correctly.
So these aren't deed restricted. We have deed restricted affordable housing that holds the cost of it to that definition. But we have no way to measure. I would imagine most of these would be pretty affordable because, as I said previously, a 700 square foot unit in my backyard is very different than an apartment in Waypoint, that in terms of desirability. I mean, I think the market limits it to some extent to affordability.
Right. So we right now, how our language is, it does not, an ADU wouldn't count towards our affordable housing percentage, but by opting out, you maintain the right to require that. So you can start requiring that these be considered affordable and start filing deed restrictions, and then they'd start counting towards our percentage.
Right, but nobody has suggested that or taken any steps to do that.
Correct. Correct.
So this is in the imagined future. If it suddenly came upon the commission to do that.
Yeah. So if you're seeing all these ADUs come online and you're going on like apartments.com and you're seeing people rent out their ADUs for like $3,500 a month, and you're saying, well, that's not really the spirit of what we were trying to do here, then you can kind of start looking at that component of it.
The state, if the council opts in to the state law, that is no longer an option for the city.
Yes, if we opt in, we cannot require these to be affordable.
And if we opt in, we can never change to adapt to the times. So in other words, whatever we adopt, if we opt out, we can come back and revise it at any time. So if somebody's unhappy, with what we pass, or the city decides it's not working or that it's not encouraging enough housing, we can revise at any time. Once you opt in, there is no flexibility in the future because you will always permanently be beholden to the state requirements. Is that correct?
Right. So once if you opt into the state language, you can't make anything more restrictive than what the state's laid out.
Well, at this point, I'm sorry, Brian.
No, go ahead, Gail.
At this point, we're not talking about whether we're opting in or opting out. We've decided to
Right.
opt. So this is all, I guess you're speaking to Nora, right?
Yeah, just all the most of the comments come in. Yeah.
Well,
I think
anyone,
to clear up any.
not just the person tonight, but I mean, anybody who is, supporting us opting in needs to understand that we give up the flexibility to adjust based on changes that are happening in the city. Like we just basically can't change it.
I'd actually take it a step further, and that is we can't change anything, but the state can, and we have no way of knowing what direction the state might take it in the future.
Yeah, the state may do something wild and crazy, you never
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. Again, Galen's right. We've settled that issue. We've acted to recommended to opt out, even though the final decision is not ours. Final decision rests with the council.
I have a question, Brian, forgive me if you covered this. There was a lot of information coming at once. The parking requirement of the state versus our own.
We meet it. They said no more than one additional parking space. We're proposing one, or you guys have passed and have not proposed to change one additional parking space for an ADU.
But
Which we think is-
and we can change that in the future, again, not to beat a dead horse, but whereby opting out, we can adjust. If we find that it's a burden, we can change that in the future. And again, if we opt in, there is no changing that.
And then one interesting thing I found, because I've been looking about the cost and the size of ADUs to get a benchmark out there, and I came across this UC Berkeley article from 2017 that did a study of in Portland. And what they found is the average cost to build is about 150K, and the average size was 631 square feet. So I think we've been throwing out a lot of numbers that this has been helpful in anchoring around, like, are we at a reasonable size? What's going to be the cost of these things? Like, this was really helpful. So I just want to
Yeah,
share.
I mean, I think to keep in mind, the larger you go, it's not getting cheaper the larger you build it. You know, if you're building 1,000 square foot ADU, that's more expensive than building.
Exactly.
ADU.
But I add, as a residential realtor in the city of Norwalk, the reason we don't have more accessory apartments is the vast majority of real estate agents think they're illegal. It's not legal to have a second kitchen in a home. And so if that's a misperception that's been going on for years, then maybe the planning and zoning department needs to let more people know, because I think the opportunity here is not for people building these $100,000 places, but converting space in their existing home that they don't need, whether it's a walkout finished basement or a garage apartment, something to that effect. And that's very cost effective. And you can't regulate the rent on private property. It's not like a developer building a big apartment building where X number of units are affordable. You're talking one-offs here. So the homeowner can charge what they can get. And then just to go back to the square footage, I just took a very quick look for ranch homes in Norwalk that have sold this year. And there are 8 that are all right about between 700 and 850 square feet. So I think we're in the ballpark, and those are all 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes with a living room, dining room, and a kitchen. So I think the average person doesn't know how big a square footage is. If you have an 800 square foot ranch house, that would be a 1,600 square foot 2-story house. That's a plenty big house. So if these are supposed to be, granny pods or whatever, it's a reasonable size. So I just like to clarify those things. Thank you.
All right, why don't we move on to action? We do have excuse me, a draft resolution on the changes. Is there a motion to either approve or deny the
Can
resolution?
I make a suggestion or a proposal?
ahead.
Can we
Sure.
can we vote on each item separately?
I don't see why not. I mean, it's mostly about setbacks and then about, can we split it into 2 items, one being setbacks and the other one being screening?
Yeah.
Is that all right with you, Nick?
Totally, yeah.
Okay,
And I'm not voting on this, right?
that's right.
Right.
Not on this one, Hector.
Mr. Williams.
Correct. All right, but in order to show us those, let's put up the resolution. Because they're
Sure.
contained within the resolution.
Let me make sure I got the right one. Oh, and I should say, this was remembered it for the cannabis portion. I will not forget it for this. So again, we referred this back out to Deep, Harbor, and our neighboring communities. And Westcog. Deep did not find it inconsistent with the harbor management plan. And we did get comments back from Deep, who found it generally consistent with the Coastal Management Act, which I will pull up just so that that is officially entered into the record.
Okay.
Right, and now I can pull up.
I just want to say, on that note, I'm surprised that there was no feedback on the mobile units, you know, those sort of wheeled units that we are not allowing in terms of their sanitation, because a lot of those are emptied directly into well, sometimes they're emptied illegally into storm sewers, but they are often you know, self-contained sanitation systems, and that gets into a whole complicated field with the health department. And that's I'm only addressing earlier comments about why don't we allow wheeled vehicles, but it's in terms of their hookup to current sanitation, whether it's septic or the town system. It gets complicated. So I'm just saying that I was surprised not to see any mention of that in feedback from Deep. Anyway, that's all.
Okay, so can we come back to these three?
Sure.
I'd like to take this as a single item. Is there a motion to approve this change in the detached, regarding detached accessory dwelling units, AAA zone, AA zone, minimum side setbacks, and then the 10-foot minimum setback in all other zones, and then a rear setback of 10 feet. Is there a motion to approve that?
I move that we approve, Mr. Chair. This is Darius.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, Steve seconds. Any discussion? All right, let's do a show of hands. All those in favor of adopting those setback requirements?
Aye.
Okay, are there any opposed? Nick is opposed. Okay, that one.
And Galen, I believe.
Oh, I'm
It's a
sorry.
little- It's a little tricky to do the hand vote when we have two cameras off, so I just want,
Yeah.
I heard Tammy, but I didn't
Oh,
hear
yeah.
JJ. Or I heard
Right,
JJ, didn't hear Tammy.
Yeah, I mean, I could see everybody. Galen, you had your hand up for the first round. I mean, I can't hear you.
You muted, Galen.
You're muted, Galen.
I know I did. I said I changed my mind.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, then let's do a roll call. Go ahead.
Sure. Ms. Langalis, and this is to change the setbacks to the increased setbacks that were shown.
To the setbacks that are already in
In
existence.
red, right, the ones in the red, in the draft.
Right,
Yes,
correct.
yes.
Right. Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Mr. Rowena,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
No,
Mr. Cantor,
No.
Ms. Jordan Byron,
No.
Mr. Mishak,
Yes.
And Mr. Schulman.
Yes.
All right, let me count. Okay, so that motion carries.
Okay, let's go on to the next. Okay, and these are the standards for buffering.
Correct.
Apply obviously only for detached accessory units. All right, is there a motion to approve the bufferings?
I'll move.
Okay, Mr. Rowena moves
I'll second.
and JJ seconds. Again, I guess let's go to a roll call.
Sure. Ms. Langalis,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Mr. Rowena,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
Yes, I guess, yes.
Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Ms. Jordan Byron,
Yes.
Mr. Mushak. You just muted yourself, Mike.
Oh, just as I was about to talk. Yes, I'm voting for green buffers.
And Mr. Schulman.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, that one's unanimous. Was there anything else up on the draft?
Nope, those were the only two changes that we
Okay,
had proposed.
and Mr. Rowena, you wanted a third?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to amend the resolution to add the requirement for a site plan review for detached ADUs. But before that happens, I just wanted to say something. I read in Nancy on Norwalk this morning quoted me as saying that how I was vehemently against ADUs, and I know I said that several times, but my point in saying that was I was voting for something that was part of something that I wasn't in favor of, but I felt it was a foregone conclusion that it was going to happen, and so that's why I voted for it. But I just wanted to say that with the detached ADUs, there was a lot of questions that went through my mind as a real estate lawyer. You know, I wondered to myself, for instance, like well, actually, I shouldn't say two of the speakers. One of the speakers tonight and one of the letter writers, email writers, both live in seriously private regulated communities. One of which in particular has an extremely active architectural review board. And I believe that both of them have restrictive covenants that do not allow anything other than a single family resident on a lot. So I wondered to myself, you know, how those areas are going to be affected by this new regulation. I also wondered whether if an ADU is built, whether that's going to give somebody the right to condo it like they can with a two-family. I also wondered how the spirit intent of this regulation from the state of Connecticut affects a municipality like Norwalk as opposed to New Canaan or Wilton or Westport, where we have met and exceeded the affordable housing requirement, and the surrounding communities aren't even close. So those were just some things that I wondered about, which was why I'm opposed. Mostly I'm opposed because, as I said before, I feel like we are changing the zone retroactively to multifamily throughout the city of Norwalk. But I've said all that, and I wrote that email because I was going to be brief, and that's all I'm going to say. But I do believe that the neighbors of properties, owners that are going to consider the construction of an ADU are entitled to notice and some input. If not, that it can be built, that's a foregone conclusion, as I said in my email, but at least they should have some input as to location.
Is there a second to Richard's motion?
I'm going to second it, but I want to say something as
Go
well.
ahead.
I'm already on the record in supporting the site plan review in an earlier meeting when I thought this was based on feedback from the Common Council. And the Common Council represents the citizens of Norwalk. You know, they're elected, we're appointed. And as part of our due diligence, I think we need to pay attention to the feedback from the council members and not ignore it. And so I think my earliest feeling about site plan review was negative, but we were also talking about special permit. In one of our meetings, I was confused over, and I think you all remember this, whether Richard was talking about special permit or site plan review. Special permit is definitely onerous and a high standard to meet for someone, but site plan review does, it does give some control of neighbors to voice an opinion, and yet it also gives the control of the commission to opt out of a public hearing. And you know, we can make that decision. So it's not that every site plan review would require a public hearing, with the you know, understanding in that case that a lot of times that might discourage the building of a detached ADU, because people would not want to have all their neighbors coming out and saying, you know, they just don't want to be pitted against their neighbors. But I have come around on that, and I do support site plan review. And I think that's something in the future we can change if we find that it's so onerous that we're not generating the ADU building that we would like to see. But in this case, I think it gives comfort to the Common Council members and other members of the public who have spoken about this issue. And so I'm going to support Richard's amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
I have a comment.
Well, I think Galen was the first.
Okay, go ahead, Galen.
I've got a lot of comments here. First of all, the Common Council as a body did not express an opinion on the site plan review. It was a committee on the Common Council. And there are numerous Common Council members who have since said that they are going to vote not to opt out because of the site plan review provision. So I don't think this is something that has been recommended by the council as a body, Mike. I think that's a mistake, number one. Number two, I think that the site plan review and the notice to neighbors does pit neighbors against neighbors. If I put a deck on my house, I may put a deck on my house right up to the edge of where it's allowed on my property. And it may make my neighbor's property less private, because now suddenly there's a deck and we're sitting out there, you know, right where they are. And they may not like that, but I have the right to do it. If I want to put a gazebo in the backyard, people may not like that, but I might have the right to do it. There are all kinds of things that you can do without a site plan review that your neighbor may not like. I think the need for affordable housing in Norwalk is tremendous. I think there are families that need these ADUs. I think we've already restricted it. We've required buffing, we've required increased buffering, increased setbacks from what our initial proposal. We've restricted it to 700 square feet, which is a relatively small unit. We've done everything we can to try to make those fit into our neighborhoods. And I think that it would be a big mistake to require a site plan review. Plus, it's very difficult, even without a site plan review, to get this accomplished. You have to have a survey, you have to have a plan, you have to come to zoning. It's expensive. The site plan review with the notice to neighbors, some of whom there may be neighbors that you've already got sort of an uncooperative relationship with. And it just makes it that much more difficult. I think we will have very, very few ADUs if we require a site plan review. And I think it would be a big mistake.
Thank you, Galen.
May I just clarify one thing? Sorry. The survey, any ADU though, is still going to require a permit, a zoning permit and a building permit,
Right.
whether it's site plan review or not. You're still going to need the survey
Right.
regardless.
Yeah.
So to say that the site plan review requiring a survey is more onerous is not accurate, actually.
No, I didn't say that, Mike. I
Oh.
didn't say that. I said it's difficult to get an approval for an ADU. It requires a survey, it requires this and that and that and that. And to add a site plan review makes it that much more difficult. So I am against adding a site plan review.
Okay.
And-
Let's move on to JJ.
Sure, I want staff to discuss the fees as well involved. So anyway, thanks.
JJ, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to bring to light a point that has been overlooked or not even discussed. These ADUs will bring value to the city.
Yes.
By making sure that seniors can remain in place, by providing housing options to their adult children, by keeping the family unit together, by establishing a place for an in-law. This brings value not just to the city, but to the neighborhood. And it heightens the value, the profile of Norwalk being a city that embraces its citizens by providing more options. It should not be about money here and the neighbor doesn't like it there. We don't want to be a city of an aging population that no one wants to move to. We don't want that. We want to grow and we want to be able to provide housing options for people who are coming into the city with a spouse or maybe with one child. And this way they can grow in that place and then move on if they outgrow it. It's already been front loaded. There's only one car is allowed. So we're not going to have this enormous amount of traffic on these roads and these streets. I mean, I think that everything has been debated to the 10th. And I really, am saddened that we're going back to, making it more restrictive. We really have debated this, and I feel that we just need to settle on the fact that, it's going to be a good thing. It's a value thing. It's something that's going to have the city grow in a good way, but also we can tweak, as Mike has pointed out. We can go back to the drawing board and say, hey, this has gotten out of control. We need to put in some guardrails. But we won't know that until we try it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said.
All right, let's move on. Anybody else?
I have one comment that I need to make though, Lou, I'm sorry.
All right, Richard.
We
and
did
Nick.
not limit the parking spaces to one car. We limited the amount of parking that has to be provided for one car. But people can park all over the street. I raised that question before. What about on Bain Street where I live, where there's no parking allowed on the road? But that wasn't right, Jackie. It wasn't, we haven't limited it to one car.
Go ahead, Nick.
Two things. One, I fully agree with the spirit of what Galen and JJ is saying and the what we want to do here. They both said it excellently. Brian, one question. At the state regs, do they require a site plan or not?
They allow the city to require a site plan review. In the state's view, a site plan review is considered an as of right approval, meaning if you comply with what's laid out, you sort of have really no kind of set. You can't deny an application if they comply with the regulations.
But if the city was to opt into the state laws, would that play that forward? Does that mean there'd be site plan requirement or not? Or we'd have to determine that?
So if we opt in, if you opt in, you can still require a site plan. So if you opt in or you opt out, you can require a site plan review.
Cities would still determine that. It does not
Yes,
mean
yeah,
one
that
way
is
or the other.
discretionary for the city. You can determine whether you want to do a site plan review or if you want to do it administratively.
Okay, are we ready to go to a vote on the motion?
Well, I'd like to just add one thing as well to the conversation. In that I agree with JJ and Galen in terms of the spirit and everything else everybody said. But one of the things we've not addressed is the value of existing property owners. And if something like a deck and a gazebo are not a house, and a house going up in a place that's inappropriate, somewhere for some reason inappropriate. Let's say they have to blast out rock and it means potential damage to your property next door, or drainage, or somehow the house is going to be towering above your property and creating an environmental issue. So there are reasons in terms of value. When you say it's going to add value, yes, it certainly will. And but you also have to protect property values of existing homeowners. And I don't think it's onerous to require some site plan reviews, which again will not be required in every situation because it'll be up to the commission to determine whether a public hearing is required in a site plan review. It's basically the staff would present it to the commission. It's an extra agenda item, but it's not a special permit level of which has to be met. But in terms of giving homeowners some potential protections, I think that's what this is all about. And you probably would agree with me, Richard.
Yes.
Staff, how is it any different?
All right, let's move to a vote.
Can I make a comment? I can I make a comment? A quick one. I heard everyone. I've been quiet. I heard you all. Looking at it from the public standpoint and the entire city, affordability and seniors are very important. You know, the median age is in the 40s, 20 years will be in the 60s. We need flexibility. We need support from the city to be flexible on our current property use. I heard a lot of you all talk, and I take it all in. I listened to the public tonight, listened to all you all speak, and I mean, let's not look at our properties. Let's look at the overall landscape of Norwalk and make a strong, conscientious decision to this. Affordability, seniors, flexibility, keeping Norwalk a spot that people want to come to and bring their families to. It's not the typical mother and father and 2.2 kids. You know, houses are blended. People live with their in-laws, or they want the in-laws to live with them. Let's take that into consideration as well as we make this decision. That's all I wanted to say.
Well said.
Brian or Steve, could you just please explain if somebody wants to make an accessory apartment in their already existing house, what do they have to do? And is that also considered an ADU?
Yes, so there's two kind of ADUs, detached and attached. So when you're describing is an attached ADU, essentially it's within the existing footprint of your house, or it's in addition to your house. That is an administrative approval. So if you're doing an addition, you do all your typical stuff. You would give us a survey to show it complies with setbacks, the architectural plans to show that the height complies, as well as the basic floor plan. And then the one additional thing that you'd show, which would be captured by the survey, is that you're providing the one additional parking space. So that's an over-the-counter permit. You come in, everything complies, we hand you the zoning permit and go on your way.
Right. And
that's so simple. So since that's so simple, why do you think more people don't do it?
I think the old regulations before we had amended them were really restrictive. I mean, it's been a while since I looked at them now that we've adopted the new regs. But the overall square footage was lower. There was a maximum, I think, amount of bedrooms that you could have. There was a lot of pretty onerous requirements. You couldn't really add on to your house. It had to be within your existing footprint. So I think overall it was, there was also requirements that if your lot was undersized for the zone, or if you didn't have the minimum frontage, you couldn't even do it, which is sort of silly. So that's all gone now under the new regs. So I mean, I think how you've adopted the new regs are generally much more permissive.
Okay, so the new zoning regulations that are about to be put in place, not that you changed 10 years ago or something.
No, right. So the ones you adopted back in September, I mean, I think we've had, I think much more interest in, I think since we've passed those, we've definitely had more people come in and actually apply, or at least inquire about doing it. So those are the ones where you could do detached. It could be 700 square feet. You could do attached up to 1,000 square feet. Those I think have been, I mean, I just don't think it's really been like publicized as this being a new thing, but I generally think more people have been coming in, applying for them.
All right, Brian,
thank you, Brian.
Let's proceed to a vote. Let's do a roll call.
And this is a vote on the amendment for the site plan review,
That's correct.
to be clear.
And I know Richard moved, and who's that was, did Mike second?
I seconded.
Okay, all right. I will start at the bottom. Ms. Langalis,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson,
No.
Mr. Rowena,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
no,
Mr. Cantor,
No.
Ms. Jordan Byron,
No.
Mr. Mushak,
Yes.
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes.
All right, let's do my counting then. I believe I have 5 yeses to 4 nos.
All
Just
right.
double check. Tammy was a yes.
Thank you,
Eric
guys. I
was-
think it was 5-4.
Richard, yes.
It passes. I'll remind people, as several people have said, that if this appears to be holding back significantly construction of ADUs, at least we have the right, should the city opt out, to change the regulation.
how will we determine that?
How will we know that?
How will we know that? If, if we don't get applications for ADUs, how do we know that? I
Well,
mean,
the only place where it's going to apply, Galen, are to freestanding ADUs. So we should have information on ADUs in existing buildings, which it seems to me we can use as a rough way of judging.
I don't think we know the ramifications of this decision, but we will definitely find out.
Yeah, and site plan review does not apply to attached units.
Oh, it does not. All right, let's, I appreciate everyone's participation in this conversation.
This goes to public hearing next. Is that
What's that?
this has to go to public hearing? this
No.
change?
No.
No, we had a public hearing.
We've
No,
just,
But this change wasn't noticed.
Steve, I'll
Yeah,
ask
the-
you to comment on
No,
that.
Sure, so you're allowed in basic with these kind of things to make something more restrictive. You can't add, you couldn't have added like 2 ADUs to be allowed on a property, for example. That would be something where you would have run afoul of the notice provision. But basically you're adding a restriction to an application. So you do that the same way with conditions you place on other applications. I would view it the same way.
Why don't we add suspenders to the belt or belt to the suspenders? We didn't actually take formal action on the rest of the language in the resolution. So can I have a motion to approve the rest of the language in the resolution?
I move that we approve the rest of the resolution.
Okay, Darius moves.
I second.
Mike seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
No, I'm sorry. We have the blank screens. Brian, why don't you do a roll call?
Sure. Ms. Langallis,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Mr. Rowena,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
I abstain. I don't know. I'm not sure what we're voting on, to be honest.
Well, Nick chopped it up, so I'm just going with yes.
Mr. Cantor,
no.
Mr. Schulman. Oh,
Yes.
sorry, going in order. Ms. Jordan Byron,
You couldn't hear me. I was on mute, but I was like, can you please post the rest of the language?
sure. So, yeah, this was,
So we'll start all over again?
We all received this language in the mail. We all had an opportunity.
I know, but I just want to see it on the screen. That's all.
Why don't you go to the top, go to the top?
And isn't it true that our earlier vote was just to send it to the Common Council, but it was not officially adopted? Is that correct?
I don't know what the earlier vote was for, to be honest with you. I have no idea what we voted to before.
We needed to have something. The Common Council needed to have something to act on according to the regulation to come back to us. But we didn't officially adopt it until tonight.
No, we did adopt it. We did adopt it. It came back reworded, I believe.
correct. So you had originally adopted new language back in September. That language did become effective because that's what sort of the ECD committee had asked, is that you revise the ADU language before they officially determine whether to opt in or opt out of the language. So you had adopted new language that became effective. That language was then reviewed by ECD, and then they had proposed these additional changes, which you just voted on tonight, to be included as part of a revision to your already adopted language. So that's what you voted on tonight. So that was the two increased setbacks and then the buffer requirement.
And you could add the site plan addition.
Oh,
As a
right.
total.
Can't forget about that.
So
Yeah,
that's what everyone voting yes on this will be voting on all three pieces. Again, I guess is what we're saying.
No,
Yeah,
we're voting on the black language, the red language we've already adopted.
I don't think you need to vote on the black language, Louis, because this is already in effect. So this isn't changing.
All right, then I apologize for complicating matters. Let's then move on. We'll close the hearing.
Well, the thing is, we were voting after the public hearing tonight. Correct?
Hearing's already closed, no?
Close the public hearing.
Yeah, close the public hearing, but this vote is in response to the public hearing tonight.
That's correct.
Okay, so the black language as you said it in the text, was is post public hearing. Well, anyway, maybe I'm making this too complicated. I thought we were
Yeah,
voting again after
The
the
text
public
in
hearing.
black was already adopted, so that's already in effect today, not proposed to change. The only-
After a previous public hearing.
Right, that was approved
Got it.
by you effective in September. So the only things that you were voting on were the two
Okay.
red.
And we
It's
voted on
just-
this stuff like 5 times already. I mean, this is.
All right, let's move on, so that we can all go to sleep.
Well, is the floor still open? Because I'd like to make a motion.
No, it's not.
I'd like to make a new proposal. So I guess when it's commissioner time to talk, then we can
Absolutely.
propose things.
We can certainly discuss, you can bring up anything you like, yes. People who were at the November 16th meeting, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, that's JJ, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Tammy seconds. Again, no, we, again, better do a roll call for approval of the minutes.
Ms. Lingallis,
Yes, I approve.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Patches,
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson,
I abstain.
Mr. Rowena, Ms. Wells,
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Yeah, I don't think Hector was here either.
I caught up with the material.
Ms. Jordan Byron,
Oh, I was here. Yes, I approve.
Mr. Mishak,
Yes.
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes. Comments of directors, Steve?
Sure, just to give you a quick heads up with that we were scheduled to have the public presentation of the zoning regulations, but out of an abundance of caution, as I stated, we are going to have a secondary legal review done of the document, which is already underway. So as soon as that's done, we'll make some edits and send it back out to you guys, and then schedule the meetings. Just give you a heads up. That's why we were delayed a little bit. And I just want to say, and I don't trying to butter you up at all, but I thought your ADU conversation was really good and everybody was really respectful of everyone's opinions. I know not everybody's happy with the final changes that were made, but I thought you guys really discussed the kind of key issues and really were respectful of one another. And I thought it was a good educational conversation for everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
That's it.
Okay, comments of commissioners. Nick?
What's the process if we want to make proposals to changing regulations? So if we want to propose removing the site plan review that we just implemented, what's the process for that?
Steve?
So that would have to be, so technically anybody from the public could make file an application for an amendment to the regulation. So someone could come in and say, I want to make it by special permit, assuming that the council votes to opt out. So if that happens, anybody can make any request to change any aspect of the zoning regulations at any time. If it's going to be sometimes staff makes recommendations for changes, or the commission can request changes, but it would have to be, in this case, it would have to be the whole commission asking the staff to put the language together. So like one individual commissioner technically wouldn't be a representation of the entire commission. That makes sense?
Not really. Like
So
there's one, if I make a motion to pull out, like, I want to pull out the site plan review that we just implemented, that we just voted on. Like, does that get seconded? And
So right now, that's the law of the land, once it hits the effective date. So you'd have to go through a brand new public hearing process, renotice it and do all those things again. But that would have to be the will of the whole commission. It couldn't be 3 or 4 people wanting to do that, because you'd have to vote amongst yourselves to take that action to go forward.
it'll just be a majority vote, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But we can bring that up at any point in time, correct?
Correct. Just like any other aspect of the regulations you had an issue with.
Thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, I just want to say amen to what Steve had said about this conversation and leave it at that. And with that, all that is required is a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, Darius has moved. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Tammy seconds. All those in favor?
It was JJ, and I second too.
Happy holidays,
Everybody have a great holiday season, and we'll see you all early in January.
Happy holidays.
What date in January?
The meeting.
The 4th, I'll send out a calendar.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, good
Thanks.
night, everyone.
Be well.
Merry Christmas and Happy New
Tammy,
Year.
I hope you're feeling
Happy
better
holidays.
soon.
Oh, thank you.